Chapter 2370. Boom, boom, boom. The red tile came crashing down. The tile was very small, only the size of a palm, but it gave people the feeling that a piece of the sky was falling down. Similarly, the bronze let out a bright light as well. The glow was dazzling. In an instant, the bronze and the tile bumped into each other. Boom! At that moment, it was as if heaven and earth were collapsing. The space where the collision took place was collapsing. Many people felt their souls were trembling. Boom, boom, boom. A shock wave swept across. Even though Luli had stepped back at once, he was still involved. He was smashed away. His back was covered in blood. Clearly, he was badly injured. The Tsang dragon's attack was fast. The two pieces of holy weapon collided not far away from Luli. The collision of holy weapons was so horrifying that Luli was inevitably seriously injured. Whoosh! Luli stepped back quickly. At the same time, he flew the bronze back. He was on fire. Since the bronze was not with him, Luli could not shield himself from the fire. Even though Luli's physical body had improved a lot recently, he could not stand it. He was on fire. Luckily, Luli was fast enough. He retreated into the area of white fire. The white fire had no effect on him. It could not hurt him one bit. Whoosh! Even though he was in pain, he stepped back quickly and flew the bronze back. The bronze belonged to Yin Tianfan, and he could not let Tsang Long take it away. Luli took control of the bronze and took it back. When he was back to the safe area, he could not stand it anymore. He rolled around on the ground and passed out. Luli! Yin Rulan and the others came over. Yin Qingrui took Luli into the interspatial artifact at once, threw him into the pond and fed him the pellet. Tsang Long! Yin Tianfan glared furiously at Tsang Long in the distance and bellowed. Tsang Long flew back while laughing out loud. There was a trace of pity in his eyes. If Luli had reacted a bit slower, he would have been dead by now and the bronze would have fallen into Tsang Long's hand. Brother Long, you are so awesome! Brother Long is amazing. That little bastard was almost killed by you. Hee, who is Brother Long? Even Yin Tianfan was easily suppressed by him, let alone a mere second tribulation martial artist. The next time this little bastard dares to covet those 3 treasures, Brother Long will kill him. The morale of the Tsang family was greatly boosted. Although they didn't know how to get out now, they were happy to be able to suppress the people from the Yin family. We can't get out and we can't let you out either. Luli's injuries were quite serious this time. Not only was he injured by the shard of the holy weapon, but he was also burnt by the flames. Otherwise, he wouldn't have fainted right away with his super strong constitution. Now that Luli was seriously injured, there was nothing they could do. Yin Rulan told them to cultivate and rest. If this person didn't have a problem with his brain, he would be extremely cruel to himself. If it was a group of young masters and ladies, they wouldn't do this. Luli was not mentally ill. He was being cruel to himself. He had been doing this all the time. His body could withstand pain. How could his strength increase so easily if he did not suffer? Luli thought it would be worthwhile if he could improve his body through some suffering. 3 days later, Luli's injuries were serious. He came back. Tsang Long didn't do anything. It seemed that Yin Tianfan didn't dare to do anything rash. After 3 days of recovery, Luli came out full of vigor. He went to refine his body again. Yin Tianfan went with him as well. Luli and Yin Tianfan had been on the alert in case Tsang Long and the others would sneak up on them. Still, Tsang Long didn't do anything. 3 days later, Luli came back and another 3 days passed. The cycle repeated. Luli was torturing himself and his body was improving. Tsang Long didn't take any actions. He seemed to be cultivating in the interspatial artifact. The other Tsang family warriors were cultivating as well. Only one young man was studying the divine runes. He must be trying to crack it. On the 19th day, Luli was still in the flames and his injuries were serious. When he was about to leave, more than a dozen warriors of the Tsang family took action at the same time. They all launched long-range attacks at Song Long. Chapter 2371. Song Long and the others had planned this beforehand. They had been preparing for this day for more than a dozen days. They had calculated this scene beforehand as well. The more than a dozen people at the front were faint. The real attackers were Song Long and Song He. The long-range attacks of the more than a dozen attracted many people's attention. The Yin family warriors were all attracted by them. None of them noticed Song Long and Song He, who were moving in the blur. The people from the Yin clan did not notice, but Yin Tianfan was the first to notice, because the two of them were attacking him, and two murderous intents had locked onto him. Hoi! In the time for one breath, the two had reached Luli. Then, each of them released a powerful attack. They didn't use their holy weapon shards because they needed to withstand the flames. Song Long took out a spear and stabbed at Yin Tianfan. A shadow of the spear pierced through the void and appeared directly in front of Yin Tianfan's head. Song He took out a bow and shot out more than a dozen arrows at once. Almost at the same time as Song Long's spear, the arrows were aimed at Yin Tianfan. Yin Tianfan was strong, but he had to step back or he would be injured when he was faced with two powerful warriors of the same realm. He was still in the flames, and he could lose his life if he was not careful. Therefore, he shouted at Luli at once, "Patriarch Lu, step back." While they were attacking, Luli had come back to his senses. He had been through many battles of life and death. His reflexes were fast. He knew at once that Song Long and Song He's real target was him. He flew up and stepped back at once. But as soon as he stepped out of the black flames, Song Long and Song He began to attack him. Whoosh, 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 Song Long also made a move with his spear. This was different from the previous one. Previously, it was a feint. This was the real move. Song Long knew that he could not kill Yin Tianfan. He just wanted to knock him back. As for Luli, Song Long had to kill him. Song Long's spear had a hint of yellow air around it. Air of pallid flames. This kind of air was hard to come by. It was an overbearing energy in heaven and earth. This kind of air of pallid flames was rare. Every strand of it was priceless, much more valuable than Yin Qingrui's holy water. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. On the other side, Song He shot out hundreds of arrows in an instant. It felt like the sky was filled with shadows of arrows. The space around Luli was torn apart. Countless shadows of arrows were shooting toward Luli. Many horrifying killing intent locked onto Luli. Not good. Yin Rulin and the others were panicking. The two most powerful warriors of the Tsang family had made a move and they had released such horrifying attacks. Could Luli survive and come back? Luli, watch out for the Tsang dragon's attack. Yin Rulin's gaze was fixed on that yellow spear shadow, and she transmitted her voice anxiously. Without Yin Rulin's reminder, Luli had already locked his eyes on that yellow spear shadow. Song He shot out hundreds of arrows. Every one of them looked horrifying, powerful, and fatal. But as a matter of fact, these attacks were not powerful enough to kill Luli. In Luli's eyes, these hundreds of attacks were actually coordinated attacks, feints. The real killer move was the seemingly unremarkable spear shadow and the wisp of yellow aura on the spearhead. Luli did not know what the pale flame's chi was, but he knew that once he was touched by the yellow gas, he would die for sure. In an instant, Luli made up his mind. His heaven separation bead glowed. A wind warcraft appeared and dashed towards the yellow spear shadow. Boom! The wind demonic beast was very fast. When it collided with the spear shadow, the wind demonic beast burst apart like a clay jar, unable to withstand a single blow. Luli's pupils contracted. The speed of the spear shadow was not affected much. The heaven separation bead glowed as Luli sent out 3 wind warcraft in a row. Boom, boom, boom. On the other side, the hundreds of arrows were coming as well. They landed on Luli one after another, and then there were horrifying explosions. The space around was torn apart, and the noise of the explosions was deafening. The shock wave blew away the flames around, raising the temperature in the hall. Luli was inevitably injured after the hundreds of attacks landed on him. He was wounded all over. His skin and flesh were torn apart. His bones were exposed in many places, and some were broken. Luli could not avoid the hundreds of attacks. He had to take them head-on. He seemed to be in a miserable state, but for him they were only flesh wounds. Luli paid no attention to them. He stared at the spear shadow. If the three-wind warcraft he sent out still could not stop the spear shadow, then he would be in trouble. Boom, boom, boom. The three-wind warcraft charged at the spear shadow one after another. All of them were crushed like clay statues. Luckily, after 4 wind warcraft were killed, the spear shadow slowed down. Go! Luli retreated quickly without any hesitation. The spear shadow could not catch up with him anymore. Luli successfully escaped and flew back to the Yin family. What a pity, Song Long and Song Yin sighed. That was a good chance. Yin Tianfan was beaten back and the two of them successfully killed Luli. Song He's attack also trapped Luli. Song Long's attack was supposed to kill Luli. Unexpectedly, Luli sent out some beasts to fend off Song Long's attack and successfully escape. Luli, are you okay? Yin Ruolin and Yin Tianfan came over. Seeing that Luli was covered in wounds, Yin Ruolin and Yin Tianfan felt sorry and angry. Luli raised his bloody hand and waved it off. He looked at Song Long and Song He in the distance. Luli was almost killed by Song Long twice. Even if he were made of mud, he would be angry. Originally, there was no hatred between him and the Song family. But this time there was enmity. A glint of killing intent rose in Luli's eyes. If he had the chance, he would kill Song Long. Luli went into Yin Qingrui's interspatial artifact to tend to his wounds. Song Long and the others had to leave. Song Yen and Yin Qingrui were frustrated. If they could not kill Luli this time, it would be difficult to do so in the future. If Luli got the 3 treasures, it would be their turn to suffer. Song Yen. Song Long came back and gathered Song Yen and the others into the interspatial artifact. Looking at Song Yen, Song Long asked, "You have been studying the divine glyphs for a long time. Have you found anything?" "No." Song Yen sighed and said, "The divine glyphs here are indestructible. The only thing I am sure of is, after the 3 treasures are taken, the divine glyphs here will weaken. By then we can leave. We cannot get close to the 3 treasures now. We will have to wait for the Yin family to get the treasures and then leave with them." The powerful warriors were upset. That horn was so horrifying. If Luli took it, would they have a chance to survive? "Don't worry about that." Song Yen thought about it and said, "It doesn't matter even if they get the horn. That is an ancient artifact with ancient divine glyphs in it. It is not easy to control them. Without studying them for dozens of years, they will not be able to control them. So, we will wait for them to get the treasures and then we will leave." "Not necessary? Okay." Chapter 2372. After several days of treatment, Luli went back to the area of black flames to refine his body. This time, not only Yin Tianfan but also Yin Ruolin and several others were guarding at the edge of the flames. If Song Long and the others were to take action, they could distract them. This time, Song Long and the others didn't move. Since they couldn't kill Luli before, it would be harder to kill him now. Song Yen said that Luli couldn't use the horn even if he took it. The ancient patterns could not be deciphered in a short time. Without deciphering the patterns, the horn couldn't be used. Song Yen was very accomplished in the study of patterns, even better than Lu Hai. He could tell as well. The 3 treasures were the core of the formation. As long as they could be taken, the patterns would weaken and everyone could leave. From then on, Luli's body refinement was not disturbed by anyone. Every time he was burned, he would recover in the holy water. His physical body was getting stronger. But as time went on, the degree of strengthening decreased. Maybe it was because his physical body was too strong, or maybe the effect of the holy water had weakened. Time moved on. 5 months later, Lu Li's physical body was much stronger than before. His resistance to fire had improved as well. He didn't have to use the holy weapon fragment now. He could withstand the black flames with his physical body alone. Wait! Lu Li suddenly had an idea after he was no longer afraid of fire. Since he could walk in the area of black flames freely, could he take everyone to the exit with the interspatial artifact? As long as they could get out, it wouldn't matter if they couldn't get the 3 treasures. At least, they wouldn't be trapped here forever. Lu Li shared this idea with others. Yin Tianfan decided to give it a try. He went into Lu Li's interspatial artifact and asked Lu Li to take him through the flames. It turned out that Lu Li was overthinking. As soon as he entered the area of flames, the separation bead began to tremble and Yin Tianfan was knocked out. I think I have to get the 3 treasures. Lu Li had no other choice. The Tsang family hadn't done anything and they wouldn't either. The black flames had no effect on him. He wouldn't die even if he was attacked by the horn. Now was the best time to get the treasures. Lu Li talked with Yin Tianfan for a while and decided to take action today to see if he could get the 3 treasures. Just like before, he leisurely rushed toward the area of the black flames, while Yin Tianfan, Yin Rulan, and the others stood guard nearby. On the surface, they looked the same as before, but in fact, everyone was secretly on guard. This was a very crucial moment. Yin Tianfan and the others believed that Song Long would not sit back and watch Lu Li take the 3 treasures. He would try to stop Lu Li. Xiao! Lu Li had been moving around slowly in the area of black flames. Suddenly, he sped up and dashed toward the 3 treasures. The people from the Tsang clan noticed this. Someone sent a message to Tsang Long and the others. However, Tsang Long didn't come out from his spatial god tool. He only sent a message for people to pay close attention. Tsang Long and the others had finished their discussion. They decided not to stop Lu Li from getting the 3 treasures because it would be hard to stop him anyway. They might as well let Lu Li take them. More importantly, if Lu Li could not obtain the 3 treasures, the runes here would not be solved and they would not be able to get out. Lu Li was close to the 3 treasures. He couldn't worry about Tsang Long anymore. He must stay alert or he might be killed by the inhibition formation on the platform. He approached the platform slowly, holding the heaven separation bead in one hand and the bronze spear in the other. He stared at the horn and his body was tense. He was so far away from the horn that he fell to the ground in pain. How could he be so close now? Once the horn was blown, would he be able to stand it? 100 steps, 10 steps, 5 steps. The horn was right in front of Lu Li. Once again, he sensed a fatal sense of danger in his soul. This time, he did not step back. Instead, he checked with psychic power to make sure that Song Long was not under attack. Then, Lu Li sat down with his legs crossed. Buzzing, the platform glowed and then the horn flew up, making a sound that sounded like ghosts crying. Lu Li felt his soul was being torn apart. He fell to the ground and rolled around with his head in his hand. In addition to Lu Li, Yin Tianfan, Yin Rulan, and everyone else from the Tsang family and the Yin family, apart from those in the interspatial rings, were rolling around and screaming on the ground with their heads in their hands. At that moment, everyone felt like demons were crawling out from the horn and their souls were being torn apart. Woo woo woo, just like before, the horn was blown for a while. The glare from the divine patterns died down and the horn fell down. The pain in Lu Li's head was dying down. Luckily, his body could stand the black flames. He was not hurt even when he rolled around in the flames. After the time for a few breaths, Yin Rulan and the others crawled up. Yin Rulan went into the interspatial artifact at once to dress up. Yin Chungrui put most of the others into the interspatial artifact. Later, Lu Li would trigger the horn again. Their souls might be strong, but their souls would be hurt. It was pointless to stay outside. The Tsang family took actions as well. Tsang Long asked most of them to go into the interspatial artifact in case they suffered in vain. Only 3 of the Tsang family stayed outside, and the others went into the interspatial artifact. For this reason, Yin Tianfan and the others could not afford to be careless. That was what happened to Tsang Long. His sneak attack almost killed Lu Li. Lu Li sat up. Without opening his eyes, he asked Blood Fairy, "How is it going?" Just now, when the horn was triggered, the divine patterns must have been triggered. Lu Li let Blood Fairy out and asked her to check carefully to find a solution. Blood Fairy replied, "There are divine patterns around the platform. Once you get close, the horn will be triggered and the horn will attack automatically. I believe the Master of the Hall of 7 Tones did this on purpose, so that those who come in cannot get the 3 treasures." Lu Li frowned. The Master of the Hall of 7 Tones was a freak. Without the 3 treasures, the divine patterns could not be cracked and they could not leave. To get the 3 treasures, they must find a way to crack the divine patterns on the platform. This was a vicious cycle. "Can't you do it?" Lu Li asked. Blood Fairy answered, "I can't. The divine patterns on the platform and the formation of 2 extremes are one. They are both connected to the main divine patterns of the Hall of 7 Tones. Therefore, to get the 3 treasures, you must force your way in and suppress the horn." "Force my way in?" Lu Li was frustrated. As soon as the horn sounded, his soul could not take it any more and he fell to the ground. At that moment, he could not control his body, and he felt his soul was being torn apart. How could he suppress the horn? The horn was an ancient artifact. To suppress it, he had to rely on the Holy Weapon Fragment. Activating the Holy Weapon Fragment required divine energy and control. Lu Li was rolling on the ground in pain. How could he control the bronze to suppress the horn? "Let's do it." Chapter 2373. Lu Li decided to give it a try. That being said, he would not go up and fight with brute force. He continued to sit on the side. When the pain in his soul was gone, he walked in again. This time, he took a big step forward and stood below the platform. Buzzing! The runes on the platform glowed. Then, the horn flew up again. From the horn came some ghostly cries and howls. Lu Li hugged his head and rolled on the ground. This time, he controlled himself with strong willpower. He tried to stay conscious so that his soul could control his body. Lu Li's willpower had always been strong. This time, he did manage to stay conscious. Veins were popping out on his face. He bit his teeth and tried to stay conscious. After the horn sounded for 5 times, it flew down. Lu Li lay on the ground, panting in relief. He felt he had used up all his strength. He couldn't even move a finger. Just now, he had a splitting headache as well, but it was not as bad as this time. He had to use his willpower to hold on. Lu Li's spirit was damaged, and he was exhausted to the extreme. "Patriarch Lu, how are you?" After the time for a dozen breaths, Yin Tianfan noticed something was wrong. Every time the horn sounded, Lu Li's soul would be in pain. But as soon as the horn stopped, the pain would be relieved and the damage wouldn't be serious. But Lu Li seemed to be in trouble. His soul seemed to be damaged. Lu Li's soul was not hurt, but his spirit was exhausted. He tried to wave his hand and then lay on the ground to rest with his eyes closed. After the time for 1 incense stick to burn, Lu Li sat up and said something to Yin Tianfan. He took out 2 soul-nurturing pellets and took them. Then, he closed his eyes and sat down again. A moment later, the weak period of the dragon wrestling skill had come. Lu Li had to step back. Yin Tianfan asked, "Lu Li, what happened to you?" "Nothing. I am just a bit weak. I will go and have some rest. Tianfan, please protect me." Lu Li waved his hand and went back to the separation bead. He fell asleep right away and slept for 3 days and 3 nights. When he woke up, the weakness in his soul was gone. He was in high spirit. He went out after cultivating for a while. Een Tion Fan and a few others were still outside. The rest of the people were still in the spatial divine tool, including Een Ruolan. This was because the sound of the horn would make people roll on the ground in pain. After all, Een Ruolan was a young lady of a prestigious family. Luli didn't say anything. He just greeted Een Tion Fan, who nodded. Luli rushed over. The people from the Tsang clan didn't make any moves, but there were 3 people guarding outside. When Luli came to the horn, he stepped onto the platform and the horn flew up. Luli poured divine energy into it and the bronze horn glowed. Luli swung the bronze horn in his hand and smashed it at the horn. Woo woo, the horn let out a horrifying sound. At that moment, Luli began to tremble. He felt pain in his mind as if his soul was being torn apart. Under normal circumstances, Luli would have rolled down with his head in his hands. However, he clenched his teeth and continued to smash at the horn. Boom boom boom. Gutong activated his full strength and began to swing. The multicolored light instantly caused the space around him to tremble. A vast amount of divine might radiated outwards, causing the surrounding atmosphere to become extremely oppressive. Boom! The bronze horn landed on the horn. The runes on the horn glowed, but soon they were suppressed by the multicolored light. The glare on the horn weakened, and then it was smashed away by the bronze horn. At this moment, Luli could not stand it anymore. He fell down and landed on the platform. He rolled around for a bit. Since the horn was no longer making a shrill sound, his soul was soothed. Buzzing, however, to Luli's surprise, the runes on the sword next to him suddenly glowed. With a surge of horrifying chi and energy, the sword flew up and stabbed at him. Luli was scared out of his wits. He was extremely weak. He was better than last time, but his reaction was slowed down. He could not run away quickly. Similar to the horn, the sword was also covered with dense ancient runes. It must be powerful. Whoosh! The sword fell down quickly. Many thoughts flashed across Luli's mind. The heaven separation bead glowed. 3 wind warcraft came out and flew toward the sword. Boom, boom, boom. The wind warcraft turned into minced meat one by one. They could not stop the sword. The sword was only slowed down a bit. The sword was more than 10 feet away. Luli couldn't release the wind warcraft even if he wanted to. In that split of a second, 2 ideas came to Luli's mind. He had only 2 options. Either he could continue to use the bronze horn to fight against the sword or try his best to dodge and see if he could get away from the sword. But he felt it would be difficult to dodge. He felt he was being targeted by the sword. No matter where he went, he would be hit. Hoi! Even though Luli's mind was about to explode, he still made up his mind and used the bronze horn to smash at the sword above his head. Since the horn could be smashed away, Luli believed the ancient sword could be smashed away as well. Boom! The bronze horn and the ancient sword bumped into each other. The space nearby trembled. Surges of killing intent spread out. Half of Luli's body was torn into a bloody mess. Luli felt his vision blurred. He almost passed out. But the fact that the ancient sword was smashed away was the only thing that made Luli happy. He pushed himself up with his hands, trying to get back. Whoosh! A noise came from above. Luli opened his blood-stained eyes and glanced over. He saw the ancient sword flying down again with the force of thunder. Luli's eyes were filled with despair. He was too injured and his spirit was weak. He could no longer use the bronze horn. Even if he took out the relic iron, the outcome would be the same. The ancient sword had locked onto him. He had nowhere to run. He had to fight or die. Patriarch Lu, get back! Een Tion Fan shouted. Luli wanted to go back, but the sword was locked onto him. Where could he go? Luli had to make up his mind. He swung the bronze horn, poured divine energy into it, and twisted his body to the side. When Luli was twisting his body, he suddenly touched something. Out of instinct, he grabbed it. It was the third piece of treasure, the ring. Buzzing, the moment Lu Li's hand touched the ring, something strange happened. The ring shone brightly and shone with a boundless radiance. Following that, the entire world fell silent. The radiance of the sword in the sky dimmed, and the horn also lost its luster. Even the flames around it disappeared without a trace at this moment. Bang! The ancient sword smashed down and hit Lu Li's head. Then it rolled to the platform, making a crisp sound. Chapter 2374. A man in the water grabbed a piece of straw. Unexpectedly, the straw glowed. The moment the straw glowed, all the water in the river stopped flowing. Lu Li felt he was like the man in the water. He had lost all hope just now. He didn't expect that a random grab before he died would actually save his life. He moved his body and looked at the dull sword nearby. Suddenly, he understood. There were not 3 formation cores in the Hall of Twin Extremes, but one, and that was the ring. The horn and the ancient sword were there to protect the ring. Only with the ring could the divine glyphs of the Hall of Twin Extremes be broken. Otherwise, it would be pointless to take the horn and the ancient sword. What Yin Tianfan, Yin Qingrui, and the others were originally anxious. At this moment, they were also a little confused. They didn't know why the ancient sword suddenly lost its effect when it was clearly about to smash down. They didn't see Lu Li grab the ring. They only saw the glow in his hand. They were confused. What? The 3 warriors of the Tsang family who stayed behind were alerted. One of them poured divine energy into the interspatial artifact at once. Then, Song Long came out with several others. The treasures have been taken? Song Long came out and looked at the 3 people outside suspiciously. One of them explained at once. Song Long looked at Song Yen in confusion and asked, "What is going on?" "The ring." Song Yen looked at Lu Li from the distance and said, "He has the ring. The ring is the formation core of the Twin Extremes formation. As long as the ring is taken, the formation will be broken." Broken? A glint of coldness rose in Song Long's eyes. "Then, can we go over now? Can we take the horn and the ancient sword?" "Brother Long, calm down." Song Yen stopped Song Long at once and said, "The divine glyphs here are weakening bit by bit. If you go there now, you will still die. Let's wait. I think in 10 days or half a month, we will be able to leave this hall." "What a shame. The 3 treasures," Song Long sighed. There was a glint of greed in his eyes. "The ring is the formation core. Is the ring the most precious thing? I wonder what it is. If it is an interspatial ring, there must be many elixirs and materials. If it's not a spatial ring, then it must be a supreme treasure." "Don't worry." Song Yen laughed. "Primordial divine inscriptions, nobody knows anything about them. Even my master, who has researched divine inscriptions for over 100,000 years, only has a superficial understanding of them. How old is that peak-level second tribulation divine inscriptions? How could he have grasped the ancient divine imprints? We have to stay calm. As long as we find a chance to kill them, all the treasures will be ours. If we don't calm down, our treasures will become theirs." "All right, I'll listen to you." Song Long nodded slightly and retracted his gaze. He thought for a while, and gave some instructions to Song Yen, then directly returned to the spatial god tool to avoid being envious. "Elder Lu, come back!" Yin Tianfan finally came to his senses and shouted. Lu Li shook his head and climbed up when he heard the voice. He crawled to the side of the ancient sword and grabbed it in his hand. The ancient sword was easily taken down by him, and he kept it in his heavenly separation pearl without a second thought. Whoosh, his body flashed, and he walked to the side of the bugle horn. After putting away the bugle horn, he quickly leaped back. Plop, when he came back to Yin Tianfan and the others, Lu Li could not stand it any longer. He fell to the ground and passed out. Yin Qingrui put Lu Li back in his spatial god tool at once, and then let everyone out. "The divine imprint is gone? The 3 treasures are gone. Did Patriarch Lu take them? Wow, finally we can go out. Calm down. Don't be impulsive. Listen to Brother Fan. Many were cultivating in the spatial god tool. When they were teleported out, all of a sudden, they were shocked at first. Then, they were overjoyed and chattered. Quiet down. Tianfan waved his hand and got everyone to calm down. With a solemn expression, he said, "Everyone, be on guard. Guard against the attacks of the Tsang clan. The divine inscriptions here might dissipate at any moment. Lu Hai, go and take a look." Yes. They spread out and stayed alert. Lu Hai began to check the divine imprint. After a moment, Lu Hai's eyes glowed. He said to Tianfan, "Young Master Fan, the divine imprint has weakened. It is just as Patriarch Lu said." "Good. Go on." Tianfan said, "Once the divine imprint is weakened and we can go, let me know at once. Patriarch Lu is badly injured. I think it will take him some time to recuperate. We cannot wait any longer. We must leave at once." "Okay." Lu Hai nodded. Tianfan and Rulan communicated for a while. Rulan didn't seem to be happy. Instead, she looked at Song Long and said, "Song Long can sit still? He must be up to something. We must be careful." "I know. I note Song Long's character." Tianfan nodded and said, "Normally, he would have made a move. I don't know what he is up to. Let's wait and see." Rulan thought about it and said, "Don't you have a top-level healing herb? Give it to Luli first. The sooner he recovers, the sooner he can consume the horn and the ancient sword. By then, our abilities will be greatly enhanced. It will be a piece of cake for us to suppress Song Long." Tianfan was hesitating. That herb was given to him by his family to save his life. As long as he was still breathing, he could recover after taking that herb. Even the family didn't have much of that herb. Tianfan was reluctant to give it to Luli so easily. "Okay, don't be so wishy-washy." Rulan frowned and said, "Can we make it here without Luli? When we get back safely, I will ask Forefather Six for one." "All right." Tianfan forced a smile and took out a jade box. Rulan took it over with a smile and went into Qingrui's interspatial artifact to tend to Luli. Luli's injuries were serious. The horn weakened his soul and the ancient sword hurt him twice. What was more, he used the bronze artifact by force, which made him even more injured. This time, Luli was in a coma for 5 days. Rulan fed him a rare and precious herb. When he woke up, his wounds were almost healed. He had been soaking in holy water all this time. When Luli woke up, he opened his eyes and was in a daze for a moment. Qingrui walked over and said with a smile, "Patriarch Lu, Sister Lan wants you to consume the horn and the ancient sword as soon as you wake up. She said that Song Long and the others will make a move. If you can consume the 2 artifacts, we will have a chance to defeat them." "Okay. How is it out there?" Luli nodded and asked. Qingrui explained, "Nothing is out of the ordinary. The divine glyphs are weakening but at a slow pace. We can't take any action yet. We cannot use an interspatial artifact to take them over. We have to walk over. Let's keep an eye on it and let you know as soon as something happens." "Okay." Chapter 2375. The horn was not large, only the size of a hand. The ancient sword was larger and heavier. One thing in common between the 2 artifacts was that they were both engraved with complicated divine patterns that Luli could not understand. Both of the artifacts had a sense of vicissitude, just like the Hall of 7 Tones. Naturally, there was something special about the 2 artifacts. Luli put down the ancient sword and picked up the horn first. Powerful as the ancient sword was, it was not the same as the horn. The horn was a super artifact that could attack a group of people. It could defeat Song Long and the others. If he could take control of this artifact, he could defeat all the Song family warriors. Luli tried to pour divine energy into the horn. Still, nothing happened. Clearly, taking control of the horn with divine energy was not going to work. Dripping blood? Such a low-level method would not work. Luli gave it a try. Clearly, it was futile. Luli tried several more methods, but nothing worked. He thought about it and realized that there was only one way to crack the divine patterns. Blood Fairy, I'm counting on you, Luli said. He put the horn aside and began to take control of the ancient sword. Blood Fairy snuck out from Luli's body and went into the horn. Luli picked up the ancient sword to see if he could take control of it. An hour later, Luli put the ancient sword aside as well and picked up the ring. This ring was no different from the average ones, inconspicuous. At first, Luli thought it was an interspatial ring. However, upon closer inspection, he realized that it was just an average ring, nothing like an interspatial ring or an interspatial artifact. If it was not an interspatial ring, then it must be a piece of artifact. Luli checked it. There were not many divine patterns on the ring, and there was nothing special about it. It seemed to be a regular decorative ring. Like the previous two treasures, he could not refine them. Blood Fairy had finished her examination as well. She said, "Master, these are primordial sacred glyph. If you want to control this treasure, you must decipher the primordial sacred glyphs on it. And you must decipher them completely. That will take time, okay?" Luli understood. He nodded and asked, "How long will it take?" Blood Fairy said, which startled Luli. "It can be a few years, or hundreds or thousands of years." What? Luli was taken aback. It was understandable if it was a few years. But if it was hundreds or thousands of years, then what was the use of the three treasures? The other point was that they were in desperate need of these three treasures, especially this horn. If they could refine this horn, they would be able to suppress the people from the Tsang clan immediately. Luli asked after some thoughts, "Can we crack the horn as soon as possible?" "There's no other way." Blood Fairy replied confidently, "Ancient divine glyphs are different from modern divine glyphs, and the glyphs on these horns are too complex. It will take me years to decipher them. If we're unlucky, we might need a few hundred years or even forever to solve it." "Understood. Go and take a look at the ancient sword and the ring," Luli said. Blood Fairy went back into the ancient sword. This time, she came out in a short time and went back to the interspatial ring. After the time it took for 3 incense sticks to burn, Blood Fairy said, "None of them can break it. The ancient sword is like the bugle horn. As for this ring, I don't understand it. There aren't many divine inscriptions on it, but I can't understand it." "I don't understand." Luli touched his nose. He activated the interspatial artifact. A moment later, Yin Chengrue came in. Luli asked Yin Chengrue to invite Yin Tianfan, Yin Rolan, and Lu Haiyan. When they came in, Luli took out the 3 treasures and said, "These 3 treasures are from the ancient times. There are complicated ancient divine glyphs on them. To take control of them, you must decipher the divine glyph. It will take me years or even hundreds of years to decipher the divine glyph. Do you have any ideas?" "We will take control of them?" Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan looked at each other, both feeling responsible. Since Luli obtained the treasures, they belonged to him. How could he let them take control of the treasures? Wasn't he afraid that they would take advantage of him? Luli took out the 3 treasures and handed them over. "All right, don't waste time. As I said, I will only take one of the 3 and give the other 2 to the Yin family. If it weren't for your help, I wouldn't have been able to take the 3 treasures." Luli was sincere. He was not lying. This time, he had borrowed Yin Tianfan's treasures. Yin Tianfan and the others had been protecting him, and Yin Chengrue was treating his wounds. Without the help of the Yin family, it would have been difficult for Luli to obtain the 3 treasures on his own. More importantly, he was indebted to the crippled Zen master and Yin Qingxi. He was willing to let the 2 treasures go to the Yin family. "We can take a look. But since you obtained the treasures, they are yours," Yin Tianfan said. He picked up the horn and observed it. Rulin picked up the ancient sword, and Lu Hai picked up the ring. The three of them studied for a while, and then exchanged the rings. They returned the rings to Qingrui for a while. In the end, they began to try to take control of the treasures. It took them more than 2 hours. There is nothing we can do. Tianfan shook his head and asked Lu Hai, "Young Master Lu, do you have any good ideas?" "No." Lu Hai shook his head and sighed. "I don't understand the ancient divine glyphs. Patriarch Lu said it would take several years or hundreds of years. I don't think I can take control of the treasures in 10,000 years unless I can make significant progress in the study of divine glyph." Lu Li was troubled that they could not find anything. He thought about it and said, "Then you can take 2 treasures and leave. I will keep one. I cannot take control of it now. I will take my time later." But Tianfan didn't expect that Lu Li would emphasize this again. He had thought that Lu Li was just making an excuse. He didn't expect that Lu Li was sincere. Tianfan was delighted. But soon, he calmed down. He suppressed his desire and said with determination, "Let's not talk about this. Patriarch Lu, if we dare to take your treasures, our family patriarch and the 6 alien races will scold us to death." Rulin nodded and said, "Lu Li, let's not talk about this. We cannot take your treasures. If you say it again, we will turn hostile." Lu Li touched his nose in embarrassment. He gave the ancient sword to Rulin after some thoughts and said, "Fine. I will take the other 2 and you can have this one. You helped me in the second heaven back then, so I'll take it as returning the favor. If you don't want it, I will turn hostile." Rulin forced a smile. She put away the ancient sword and said casually, "Okay. Let's leave it at that. What should we do next? Let's have a discussion. The Tsang family will not let this go. What else can we do?" Tianfan said with strong killing intent, "We will go in first. If the Tsang family wants to fight, then let's fight to the death. Since we cannot take control of the 3 treasures, then we will fight with our own abilities. We have many powerful warriors on our side. We are not afraid of them. No." Chapter 2376. 10 days had passed and the power of the patterns had been weakening. Lu Hai and Song Yen had checked. The flames and ice were no longer lethal to them. They could force their way through now. What surprised the Tsang family was that the Yin family didn't do anything. It was as if they didn't find a way to get through. The Tsang family didn't dare to move for fear of trap. Half a day later, the Tsang family couldn't wait any longer. Tsang Long sent a man to try. The man reached the door easily. The flames were dozens of times weaker than before. They couldn't do much harm now. The Yin family still didn't do anything. Tsang Long couldn't wait any longer. Going in first meant they would have a head start. It also meant they could get the treasures inside, and they could set things up earlier to catch the Yin family off guard. If the Yin family went in first, they could set things up inside. When the Tsang family got in, they would die a miserable death. "Let's go in." Tsang Long couldn't figure out why the Yin family didn't move. That being said, he didn't care. He gave the order and everyone dashed toward the door. They were all capable warriors. They all crossed the area of flames and entered the door. Some of them were injured, but they were all superficial wounds. They would recover soon. "The Tsang family has gone in. Why don't we go? Where is Brother Fan? Where is he? Why not? The Tsang family has a head start. It will be dangerous for us to go in." The people from the Yin family couldn't sit still anymore and started to make a ruckus. Yin Qingrui pressed his hand down and said, "Calm down, everyone. Elder Brother Fan and Elder Lu have already discussed this and deliberately let them enter first." Yin Qingrui's words quieted them down. Yin Qingrui didn't explain. They began to wonder why the Tsang family was allowed in. Nobody doubted Lu Li and Yin Tianfan's decision. Lu Li had proven his abilities with facts along the way. It would not be wrong to listen to him. Rui came in and told them about how the Tsang family went in. Tianfan and Rulan were sitting inside. They looked at Luli. "No hurry." Luli waved his hand. He thought about it and said, "We will go in after 4 hours. If I am not mistaken, they should be able to solve the crisis in 4 hours. But at least half of them will die." Tianfan and Rulan were inspired by Luli's confidence. They calmed down and waited quietly. They were looking forward to it as well. If what Luli said was true, then they would have a great advantage when they got inside. They wouldn't have to worry about the Tsang family messing around anymore. 4 hours later, Luli stood up. Tianfan and Rulan stood up at once. They teleported out. Tianfan waved his hand and said, "Everyone, let's go. Stay alert, it's very likely that we'll encounter danger inside." The group of people became alert as they followed Tianfan and the others into the fiery region. Similarly, the flames burned some people, but their injuries were not serious. They would recover after a while. "Go!" Tianfan, Rui, and Rulan took the responsibility. They took the lead and rushed into the gate. Luli was in the middle, protected by several people. This was what Tianfan told them secretly. Luli was so good at deciphering runes that they could not let anything happen to him. Buzzing, after a flash of white light, Luli noticed that the world in front of him had changed into a world of white ice and snow. He could not see the end of it. It was a vast expanse of white. Rulan and the others were nearby. They all took out their weapons and treasures and were observing the surroundings. Luli took a look and soon he saw the north. Because there were bloodstains over there and there were quite a few of them. There were also some severed limbs and even more snow-white corpses of small beasts. "Just as I thought." Luli nodded. His prediction was right. Based on his years of experience, he had just acquired 3 treasures. The next level would not be easy. It was easy to understand. The Hall of 7 Tones had clearly been set up by its master. The first level was an illusion, the second was the Hallway of Runes, and the third was the Hall of 2 Extremes. All 3 places could trap people. But if you didn't take the risk, you would only be trapped, not killed. The third level had given you 3 treasures. Then, at the 4th level, you would die. Treasures would not be given away so easily. If you could not survive the later levels, the treasures would still be left in the Hall of 7 Tones. "Looks like a lot of people have died." Tianfan checked around, walked to Luli and said, "Those white beasts must be powerful. I think there are at least 20 dead people nearby. They are all heading to the north." "Okay." Luli nodded. He had checked as well. Based on the situation on the battlefield and the broken limbs, he could tell that about 20 had died. "Patriarch Lu, where should we go?" Tianfan asked. Unconsciously, he was relying on Luli. He wanted to hear Luli's opinion before deciding what to do. "Wait." Luli sent out Blood Fairy to check around. A moment later, making sure that there were no runes nearby, Luli said, "Personally, I suggest we go with them. They must have attracted all the beasts nearby. We will follow them and familiarize ourselves with the situation. We will observe for a while before we decide where to go." "That makes sense." Tianfan nodded. He ordered the team to follow the Tsang family's route. Tianfan had several people scout around in case the Tsang family would set up an ambush. Luli told Blood Fairy to lurk underground and wander around. Blood Fairy was more reliable than Tianfan's scouts. With Blood Fairy around, it was almost impossible for anyone to sneak up on them. Along the way, there would be some blood stains but no broken limbs. It meant that no one had died. Along the way, they saw dead bodies of small white beasts. Many of them had been picked up and studied along the way. This little beast had very sharp claws, as well as 4 long fangs. There were also 2 spikes on its back that were abnormally sharp. Its eyes were actually a deep blue, and it looked very strange. "Master, there is something on the left." A group of small beasts is coming from underground. An hour later, Blood Fairy suddenly sent a message. Luli was alarmed, but he did not warn Tianfan and the others. He wanted to see how fast they could react and fight. Family did not disappoint Luli. Before the small beasts came close, a warrior on the left had already screamed. Then, Tianfan and Rulan rushed over with several warriors. Boom, boom, boom. The ground cracked as many small white beasts dashed out. Each of them was the size of a human head, and they were fast. They screamed shrilly and dashed over in a blur. There were 200 to 300 of them. Kill those small beasts. Protect your teammates and do not underestimate them. Tianfan was a good leader. He shouted and dashed into the group of small beasts. Holding the bronze saber in his hand, he began to kill. He did not underestimate his enemies at all. He used his strongest force at once. Clearly, he did not want to repeat the tragedy of the Tsang family. P.S. I am sick. I feel dizzy. I need to get some drips because I can't take it anymore. Chapter 2377. Woo woo, the small beasts swarmed over like a swarm of locusts. There were rays of blue light coming out from the eyes of the small beast. Those were all soul attack. If a martial artist's soul wasn't strong, once they were attacked, they would be in a miserable state. The claws and fangs of the small beasts were sharp. If the soul attacks were effective, the warrior would be torn into pieces. Fortunately, the soul attacks of the small beasts were not effective on Tianfan and Rulan. Tianfan and Rulan killed the small white beasts with the pieces of holy weapon in their hands. The others were warned by Tianfan. They formed groups of several. Once someone was hit by the soul attacks, the others would go and protect him. Even though some were injured, none of them died. Luli didn't do anything. There were only 200 or 300 small beasts, not enough for Rulan and Tianfan. After some observation, Luli was satisfied with Tianfan and the others' abilities. Tianfan and the others were quite horrifying, completely different from the playboys and young ladies that Luli had imagined. They deserved to be the top elites of the family. In addition to the family, the other young masters of the other families were strong as well. Luli didn't see the abilities of these people because he was trapped by the runes along the way. Only now did he see it for himself. In the time for one incense stick to burn, the 200 or 300 small beasts were all killed. 5 were injured and 1 was seriously injured. That young master's arm and half of his shoulder were torn off. If it weren't for the fact that Tianfan went to save him, he would have been killed. Let's go. After a while, Tianfan and the others had a better understanding of the white beast's abilities. He could understand why so many of the Tsang family had died. Tianfan admired Luli's wisdom. If they were the first ones to come in, they would be attacked by the white beast. In a surprise attack, many of them would be killed. We don't have to follow them anymore, Luli said to Tianfan after some thoughts. Now that he had a clear understanding of the white beast's abilities, it was unnecessary to follow them. This place was large. Nobody knew where the exit was or where the treasures were. If so, why should they go with them? It would be troublesome if they had set up some traps ahead. Before Luli could explain, Tianfan nodded and said, "Okay, we will take a detour and try our luck." Tianfan led the way to the left. This time, Tianfan arranged for more people to take turns to scout the surroundings. Because they were not following the Tsang clan's people, there would definitely be more white critters here. It wouldn't be a problem if hundreds of them appeared, but if thousands or tens of thousands of them appeared, it would be a huge problem. Therefore, they had to detect it as soon as possible and prepare for it. This way, the casualties could be minimized. Luli had asked Blood Fairy to keep an eye on the surroundings. Blood Fairy was much more perceptive than the others. The main reason was that the white beast was moving underground. In this way, Blood Fairy could sense it more easily. If we encounter a large number of small white beasts, We will form a 6-pointed star array later. The rest of us will be divided into 6 groups. Rulan, Qing Rui, Tianbao, Wuyuan, and Fire Beacon will be the team leaders. We will coordinate with each other and hold the fort. Each group will be divided into 3 smaller groups. 2 groups will take turns to attack, and 1 group will provide support and healing. On the way, Yin Tianfan began to make arrangements. Lu Li nodded. Yin Tianfan was capable. This defensive formation was remarkable. As long as the formation was not messed up, no matter how many small white beasts there were, they could survive. It was only a matter of time before they were eliminated. Bang, 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 an hour later, the ground in front of them burst open. 500 to 600 small white beasts dashed out. Lu Li knew this, but he did not point it out. He wanted them to get used to the formation so that they could deal with the large number of small white beasts later. Formation. This time, Yin Tianfan did not rush out. He shouted and the others took their positions. The others had already divided into groups and followed behind the 6. Lu Li and Lu Hai were in the middle. Yin Tianfan and Lu Hai were responsible for providing support and healing. Even though Lu Li had Ghost King and Wind Warcraft, Yin Tianfan did not want Lu Li to help. As far as Yin Tianfan was concerned, Lu Li was more suited to decipher the sacred runes than to participate in such a fierce battle. The battle broke out. There were twice as many as last time. At first, they were in a panic, but soon, they calmed down and cooperated with each other in an orderly manner. The team leaders of the 6th group were strong. With their support, the others had an easy time. If someone was injured, there would be someone to replace him. There would be no death. After the time for 3 incense sticks to burn, all the small beasts were killed. Many people were injured, but no one died. Everyone's faces were filled with excitement. It was a good teamwork. They could fight with ease and crush the enemies. The young masters and young ladies were happy to be able to fight side by side with Yin Rulan, Yin Tianfan, and Yin Qingrui. Many young masters knew that they were not good enough for Yin Rulan, and Yin Rulan didn't like them. That being said, as long as Yin Rulan was unmarried, they would keep their fantasy alive. They had thought that Yin Rulan had fallen in love with Lu Li. Later on, they noticed that Lu Li was looking at Yin Rulan with clear eyes. Apart from being concerned about Lu Li, Yin Rulan didn't fall in love with him. Therefore, the young masters changed their attitude toward Lu Li and became more polite. Naturally, they treated Lu Li better now that their rival in love was gone. Otherwise, they wouldn't stand a chance. Clean up the battlefield and move on, Yin Tianfan ordered. He was satisfied with the fight just now. Everyone was cooperative. At first, there was some confusion, but as time went on, they had formed a complete formation. Their combat abilities were on full display. They collected all the small beasts' bodies. The teeth, claws, and the spikes on their backs were sharp. They were good materials. They didn't know what they could be used for now, but it would be good to bring them back with them. The group continued to advance. This time, after walking for an hour, they actually discovered a few stalks of divine medicine, and they were all priceless divine medicines. They belong to whoever finds them. Yin Tianfan waved his hand. The young masters that found the herbs were overjoyed. If Yin Tianfan wanted to hand them over, they wouldn't say anything. But now, Yin Tianfan gave them the herbs, which made them happy. There are herbs. Even more people became excited. This place was extremely big, and after walking a few circles inside, everyone might be able to obtain many divine medicines. Even if they couldn't get any treasures, the herbs would make the trip worthwhile. Bang, 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 bang. Tens of thousands of miles later, the ground in front of them cracked. Ice and snow flew everywhere. Countless small beasts dashed out. This time, there were more than 1,000 or 2,000 of them. Lu Li knew this, but he didn't say it because he wanted the team to work together and become stronger. Get into formation and attack, Yin Tianfan shouted. He was steadier than ever, more like a general. Lu Li nodded. If Yin Tianfan could survive, He might become the family patriarch of the E family. This time, Luli didn't stand by and do nothing. They were all together. He could not stand by and watch someone die. Therefore, as soon as the fight began, he used the trace of the Great Path to monitor the situation. Whoosh! Dozens of small beasts came from the left. 3 of them broke through the defense line and dashed into the battlefield. One of the small beast's eyes glowed in blue. A young lady's eyes glazed over. She was under a soul attack. The small beast opened its mouth, showing its fangs, and was about to bite at the young lady's neck. Luli moved and floated over like a ghost. He swung his fist and punched at the small beast as fast as lightning. The small beast reacted and waved its claws at Luli. Boom! The small beast flew away like a cannonball but was smashed away by Luli. The others were shocked to see Luli take back his fist as if nothing had happened. Not even the skin on his fist was cracked. The small beast's claws were so sharp that they could tear apart armors. But Luli's fist was not harmed at all. Were Luli's fists made of Xingqian iron? Chapter 2378. The beast's claws were sharp. But Luli had just used the dragon wrestling skill and his body was 10 times stronger. The beast's claws could not break his defense yet. Whoosh! 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 Bang! 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 Luli had become a firefighter. When he used the trace of Tao, his senses were amazing. Wherever there was danger, he would rush over and smash the beast away with his fist. The beast's claws would also be broken. Yin Tianfen, Yin Rulan, and the others noticed Luli's situation. They were surprised. It was not difficult for them to kill the small beasts, but they had treasures in their hands. Luli could break the beast's claws with his fist, and he was not hurt at all. How strong was Luli's body? Did Luli really want to have a supreme immortal body? Yin Rulan was the most shocked. When she went to the second heaven, Luli was just a small warrior to her. She knew very well how strong Luli's body was. How many years had it been? How could Luli grow so fast? Yin Rulan didn't pay much attention to Luli's claim that he once killed a warrior of the fourth tribulation. But now, she was stunned. Supreme immortal body. Many young masters of the Yin family were envious. They were all descendants of Emperor Z. Back in the day, Emperor Z was the most powerful warrior of the third heaven in terms of physical body, the most powerful of all the supreme immortal bodies. As descendants of Emperor Z, they all had the desire to recreate Emperor Z's glory. It was a pity that none of the descendants of the Yin family had successfully cultivated the supreme immortal body. Almost all of them had given up. Nobody wanted to cultivate the supreme immortal body anymore. Luli was so young and yet he was so strong. Inevitably, they were filled with mixed feelings. The battle went on. Thanks to Luli, the super firefighter, nobody died. Only some were slightly injured. An hour later, the battle was over. All the beasts were killed. Many people were covered in blood, but most of it was from the beasts. Yin Tianfan ordered people to rest nearby. After half a day's rest, they moved on. They found some more elixirs along the way. Along the way, they ran into more beasts and some elixirs. Since the patrols were done in shifts, many people had gotten the elixirs. Yin Tianfan had said that it belonged to whoever obtained it. Many people had gained something. It was a vast place. Luli and the others had been walking for 4 days, but they still hadn't reached the border. They had run into many small beasts these days. There seemed to be only small beasts here. They didn't encounter any other dangers along the way. During the 4 days, one of them died. It was not because Luli and the others couldn't save him in time. It was because he left the team secretly to look for the elixir. Since he was too far away, they couldn't save him in time. After this person died, the rest of the people didn't dare to act recklessly. The small beasts here were still very ferocious. If a person was surrounded and attacked, he would basically die. Even if Een Tian Fan was surrounded by thousands of small beasts, even if he had the ancient bronze, he could still be killed if he was unlucky. In these 4 days, they had obtained a total of more than 50 stalks of godly medicine, all of which were of decent grade. It could be considered a pretty good harvest. Over the course of 4 days, they did not encounter Tsang Long and the others. This place was too vast, and they would not be able to meet them in a short time. Luli took back Blood Fairy and told her to study the divine glyph. Although there were no divine inscriptions in this land of ice and snow, who knew if there would be divine inscriptions in the future? It was always a good thing to learn more divine inscriptions. Now, their teamwork was getting better. They had gained some experience in dealing with small beasts. Once again, they ran into thousands of small beasts and they were all killed in the end. With Luli as a firefighter, none of them died. Only a few were injured. Therefore, Luli was reassured to take back Blood Fairy. It would be fine even if they ran into tens of thousands of small beasts. It was unlikely that they would run into hundreds of thousands. Brother Fan, 3 days later, a cultivator scouting in the periphery suddenly rushed back. He said with a face full of wild joy, "I discovered many divine herbs on a large mountain in front. I checked casually and found at least a few hundred of them. They are all transcendent grade divine herbs." What? Everyone was surprised, and then they were overjoyed. Hundreds of herbs would be invaluable. Their trip here was worthwhile now that they had gotten their hands on the hundreds of herbs. Een Tianfan's eyes glowed as well. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go and have a look." "Wait." Luli waved his hand and said, "I will go and have a look first. Safety first." Out of instinct, many people thought that Luli wanted to take all the herbs for himself. Otherwise, why would he go alone when everyone had already checked? Een Tianfan nodded and said, "Okay, we will wait here for your news." The hundreds of herbs were precious, but since Luli could give them the ancient treasures, he would not cheat them like this. What was more, they all knew that there were hundreds of miraculous herbs over there. Luli wouldn't go so far as to blackmail them so openly. Luli did not explain. He hurried over and let Blood Fairy out. He said that he was going to check on his own, but that was just for show. More importantly, he wanted Blood Fairy to do it. Hundreds of herbs. This must be a blessed land. Such a place could attract powerful beasts. Therefore, it was better to be safe than sorry. Luli wanted to check first. He had spent a long time with the Een family. He had built some bonds with them. He did not want to see more deaths. Too many of the Een family had died. It would be dangerous for him to encounter the Tsang family. Thousands of miles away from the mountain, Luli stopped. Blood Fairy secretly went over to check. Luli did not use psychic power. He was waiting for her to come back. After the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, Blood Fairy came back with a piece of news. Luli was surprised. According to Blood Fairy, there was a huge lair under the mountain with 40 to 50,000 white beasts. That was a rough estimate. The real number might be higher. 40 to 50,000? Luli sent back the news. They looked at each other, speechless. It was not that they did not trust Luli. It was just that that warrior did not find anything dangerous. Luli had gone there and now he said there were tens of thousands of beasts at the bottom? So, we don't want them? Een Tianfan trusted Luli. He sighed with pity and waved his hand. Never mind. Life is more important. We can take our time to collect the herbs. No. Luli waved his hand. I will go and collect by myself. I only want the herbs that are in my body. You can share the rest. You alone? Een Tianfan, Een Roland, and Een Chengrue were taken aback. They did not want Luli to ask for the dark herbs. They were worried that Luli might be killed. Could Luli fight tens of thousands of beasts by himself? Luli could tell that they were worried. His heart warmed up. He grinned. My body is strong. The beasts cannot break my defense. Therefore, for me, it makes no difference whether there are tens of thousands or millions of them. Chapter 2379. Since Luli was so sure, Een Tianfan and the others couldn't say more. Otherwise, they would be seen as doubting Luli's abilities. But Een Tianfan was still worried. He told the team to leave this area, and then he, Een Rulan and some other powerful warriors hid nearby to provide support. Luli knew they were nearby, but he didn't mind. He flew up to the mountain by himself. As soon as he arrived at the foot of the mountain, the ground began to shake. Then, the ground began to explode. Snow and ice were flying everywhere. Countless small beasts rushed out. There are tens of thousands of small beasts. Luli was not exaggerating. In the distance, Een Tianfan and the others nodded. They were worried. This was not a joke. Even they would have a low chance of escaping if they were surrounded by tens of thousands of small beasts. If Luli could not stop them, then he would be buried in the mountain in front of them. Hoi! Luli released Dragon Wrestle at once. He didn't move and stood where he was, allowing the small beasts to reach him from all sides. Een Tianfan, Een Rulan and the others had been watching Luli with psychic power. They saw him surrounded by small white beasts. Many small beasts were attacking and biting him. But apart from his robe being torn apart, he didn't suffer any harm. Not even his skin was broken. I think his defense can stand a full-force strike from a warrior at the middle stage of the 4th rank. Een Chungrui exclaimed. Een Rulan murmured. His physical body was not this strong before. Did he cultivate some secret skill? Did he enhance his physical body for a short period of time? Secret skill? Een Tianfan's eyes glowed. Our forefather once had a dragon wrestle skill that was horribly powerful. It is a pity that it has been lost. Otherwise we would have strong physical bodies as well. Wait, Een Rulan thought about it and said with surprise, did Luli learn dragon wrestle skill? Otherwise, why would Patriarch 6 treat him differently? Our family even gave him the title of an honorary patriarch. Maybe there is some connection. Luli and Een Qingxi were close. She was Emperor Zi's daughter and Patriarch 6 had been with Emperor Z for a long time. Maybe they had the dragon wrestle skill and passed it on to Luli. Boom, boom, boom. Luli waved his hand. Many small white beasts were smashed away. Luli rushed out and dashed toward the mountain. Luli waved his hand and generated a hand from the void. He grabbed a herb together with the mud and stones nearby and put them into the separation bead. Luli kept waving his hands. He grabbed more and more herbs. While he was flying in the sky, there were countless small beasts flying toward him from all directions. They were like moths in the sky, and there was a never-ending stream of them. Boom, boom, boom. Many small beasts were smashed away by Luli when they approached. Otherwise, the harvest would be affected. Therefore, he had to send the little beast flying before he could collect the godly medicine. The small beasts came one after another, but they were smashed away by Luli. Luli had to find a chance to grab some herbs nearby. It was a bit troublesome, but there was nothing he could do. Amazing! Een Tianfan and the others sighed when they saw this. Those powerful and terrifying little beasts that could easily kill a 4th tribulation martial artist felt like little mice in front of him. Although they were a little annoying, they couldn't bring him any harm. There were indeed many herbs on the mountain. There were about 400 to 500 in total. Luli was a bit slow because he was afraid that the herbs would be damaged. Those were all supreme elixirs, priceless. Luli was in great need of elixirs, especially those that could refine the body. 2 hours later, Luli collected all the herbs, more than 510 in total. Luli walked around to make sure that there were no more herbs. Then, he let out a long shout. Time to go! Een Tianfan and the others were smart enough to know that Luli was reminding them to go first. They left without any hesitation. After a while, Luli sped up to the top of his speed and went back the way he came. The small white beasts were fast. But after Luli used the dragon wrestling skill, he was as fast as a wind warcraft at the middle stage of the 4th tribulation. The small white beast's sudden burst of speed was fast. That being said, running for a long time slowed them down. Therefore, Luli had lost most of the small white beasts after running for thousands of miles. After tens of thousands of miles, Luli had lost all the small white beasts. Another tens of thousands of miles later, Luli caught up with the main group. There was a battle here as well. But there were not many small beasts, only several hundred. Tianfan and the others had come back a long time ago. They learned that Luli encountered tens of thousands of small beasts. Seeing that Luli came back safe and sound without a single wound, they felt as if they were looking at a god. "Do you know the herbs here?" Luli threw out the herbs and said, "I only want the herbs for body refinement. Please help me to sort them out. Tianfan, you can distribute the rest." Hiss hiss, many gasped when they saw that Luli did not hesitate to throw out the herbs as if they were weeds. This patriarch Lu was becoming more and more confusing to them. The elixirs and treasures belonged to whoever obtained them. This was a rule that had been set recently. Luli could have all the elixirs. After all, no one else could take them. If they were to collect the herbs rashly, there might be casualties. One could say that Luli had saved many lives. What? Tianfan and the others were embarrassed. The family had the herbs, but everyone wanted to get more. This was one of the achievements they had achieved when they came in. When they left, they would be recognized by the family leaders. "Don't be so sentimental." Luli threw Tianfan a glance and said, "Those who achieve great things should not be bothered by trifles. My relationship with the family is not something that these herbs can compare with." Rulin nodded. Luli was right. Luli and Qingxi were friends and Patriarch 6, and the family valued him so much. There must be more to the story. All right. Tianfan was completely convinced by Luli this time. He bowed to Luli and said, "Patriarch Lu, I have offended you before and I apologize on my behalf. From now on, you are a part of the family. I, Tianfan, recognize you as a person." "Ha ha ha." Luli laughed and said, "Then why are you calling me Patriarch? Just call me Luli. When did Rulin ever call me Patriarch?" "Okay, Luli, brother Lu, ha ha ha." Tianfan laughed and took Luli's hand. They looked at each other and laughed out loud. The previous ill feelings were gone. Everyone here was a young master and a young lady of the top level. They were all familiar with the herbs. This was a necessary lesson. They began to identify the herbs for body refinement. Among the more than 50 pieces of herbs, there were 6 of them for body refinement. Those warriors gave all of them to Luli. Of course, Tianfan compensated them as well. Tianfan deserved to be a young master from a wealthy family with the demeanor of a general. He divided the herbs evenly. Everyone had something. Everyone was in a jubilant mood. "Let's go." Tianfan waved his hand and led the team away. They felt more at ease. They began to look at Luli in a different light. Luli alone could fight tens of thousands of small beasts. As long as Luli was here, they would be safe. Chapter 2380. They moved on for another half a month. Still, they could not find the exit or the border, nor did they run into Tsang Long and the others. They did not know how many small beasts they had killed. Conservatively speaking, they must have killed at least 100,000. They had harvested many elixirs. Another 700 or 800 were harvested. They gave all the elixirs they had to Luli. Without him, many would have died. As a matter of fact, there was a way to avoid risks, which was to go into someone's interspatial artifact and let Luli or Tianfan take them. Luli's defense was exceptional. He alone could fend off tens of thousands of small white beasts. The others could cultivate in the interspatial artifact, and Luli could take them on. But none of them chose to do so. Many would rather die than to go in. Those that could come here were the elites of their families, the most powerful of the young generation. They had their pride. The moment they came in, they were ready to die. If they were afraid of danger and death, then what was the point of coming here? They might as well stay in their families. They would never be in danger. They were a group of blessed sons and daughters. Their families had given them strict education since they were young. They all had their dignity. If they hid in interspatial rings like dogs, they would be belittled by others. They would never be able to live with their heads held high. What was more, the formation was in place. Basically, they wouldn't run into too much danger. Besides, they had Luli with them. They didn't have to worry too much. They just had to focus on attacking. Luli was the best firefighter. How big is this place? This was what Luli, Tianfan, and Rulan were thinking about. It was strange that they had not run into Tsang Long and the others after so many days. However, since they could not find them or find the exit, they had to keep on looking. They pressed on. This time, after 5 days, they found another good place. Up ahead was a cold pond. In the pond, they found many elixirs. When the scouts came back to report, Luli sent Blood Fairy to have a look. As he had expected, there were many small white beasts at the bottom of the pond. Finally, there were other beasts. A fish. There was a type of fish in the cold pond. It was a fish with legs, and its body was covered in scales. It didn't look like a fish, but more like a strange beast. These fish were very large, reaching a length of 300 meters. Their mouths could swallow a castle. They had 4 legs, 2 long feelers, and a long tail. The tail had sharp spikes that reflected a dazzling cold light. There weren't many of these fish-like beasts, only a few dozen of them, scattered around the cold pond. There were 40 to 50,000 little beasts, and all of them were in the cave at the bottom of the cold pond. There were indeed a lot of divine medicines here, and it was not just 400 to 500 of them. Conservatively speaking, there were over 1,000 of them. Luli recognized some body-tempering divine herbs now. He found that there were more than 300 of them at the bottom of the cold pond. When Blood Fairy came back, Luli left quietly and went back to the team. He entered the interspatial artifact with Tianfan and the others to discuss. This is a little tricky. Chengruei frowned and sighed. Why don't we just forget about it? There are divine medicines everywhere. There's no need to take the risk. We can just search elsewhere. Rulan said nothing. She could tell from Lu Li's expression that he was not inclined to take the risk. Lu Li could survive the white beast. Those strange fish-like beasts must be terrifying. However, this was the first time he had seen another kind of beast. The temperature of the cold pond was low, but it did not freeze. Judging from the fact that the beasts could survive in the pond and the white beasts at the bottom, they could not be weak. Lu Li and Tianfan, on the other hand, were unwilling to give up. There were over 1,000 divine medicines and more than 300 body-tempering ones. Lu Li had consumed too many body-tempering herbs. He could not be so thick-skinned as to keep asking for more from the Yin family. What was more, he might have to leave the Yin family for the Windland soon. Naturally, he must prepare more body-tempering herbs. Lu Li had achieved a minor success in the Dragon Wrestler and the Void Traversing skill. Not only had his abilities improved, but his ability to escape had improved as well. Lu Li no longer had any concerns about going to the Windland. He would leave after this trip. Lu Li, how about this? Tianfan pondered for a moment and said, You lure all the small white beasts away. I will bring a few of our strongest warriors to see if we can kill those fish-type monsters. If we can't kill them, we will give up. The white beasts must be lured away or else Tianfan and the others would not be able to stand it. If the white beasts were all lured away, Tianfan and the others would be able to fight against the fish beasts alone. After all, Tianfan and the others had saint weapon fragments, and they were all disciples of famous sections. They knew many powerful secret techniques, and their battle prowess was very formidable. I will be fine. Lu Li shrugged. For him, luring away tens of thousands of small beasts was a piece of cake. He did not feel any pressure. But could Een Tian Fan and the others stand it? Don't worry about us. Een Tian Fan could tell that Lu Li was worried. He said with a smile, I will ask Lu Hai to build some powerful runes. Even if he cannot defeat us, he can at least run away. Don't underestimate us. Alright. What else could Lu Li say when Een Tian Fan had said so? Een Rulan and the others could not say much. Lu Hai could build some runes. It would not be difficult for them to run away. They had to try whether they could succeed or not. Otherwise, they would be looked down upon by Lu Li. After a moment of discussion, they left. Een Tian Fan went to Lu Hai to make arrangements while Lu Li went to check again. According to Blood Fairy, Lu Li noticed that the white beasts were at the bottom of the pond for thousands of miles. In other words, as long as he was careful, he would not alarm the fish-like beasts above. Lu Li asked Blood Fairy to do some work. After all, the fish-like beasts were too strong. It was better to be safe than sorry. After a whole day, the two sides were finally ready. Lu Li left with a group of warriors to wait nearby. They could not be involved in the battle. Staying here might be a burden. Een Tian Fan asked 7 warriors to stay, the 7 most powerful ones. If the 7 could not kill the dozens of beasts, then all of them would not die either. Lu Li led a group of warriors across hundreds of thousands of miles and found a secluded valley. He also searched around. Making sure that the white beasts were not around, he came back with a peace of mind. Are you ready? He looked at Een Tian Fan and the others. They nodded. Lu Li took out his weapon and dashed into the ground. Under Blood Fairy's guidance, Lu Li went underground. Lu Li went down for thousands of miles in one go. Under Blood Fairy's guidance, he went to the bottom of the pond. He made a louder noise on purpose. Soon, the white beasts were alarmed. He did not run away. Instead, he used the trace of Great Path and used psychic power to check in the pond. Once the fish-like beasts were alarmed, he would have to run away first. Lu Li was far away from the pond. Though many small beasts were alarmed, the fish-like beasts did not. Maybe it was because Lu Li was not strong that the fish-like beasts did not care. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Chapter 2381. Lu Li circled around underground, luring the small white beasts away. It took him almost an hour to lure away all the small white beasts. Then, he slowly moved to the south. The ferocious beasts above the pond were not alarmed. Lu Li led the tens of thousands of small beasts forward in peace. Underground, there were countless tunnels like a beehive. After thousands of miles, Lu Li came back and lured away the small beasts before he moved on. He didn't dare to move too fast for fear that the small white beasts would turn around and Een Tian Fan and the others would be in trouble. Those small beasts were not intelligent. As long as Lu Li was alive or didn't run away, they would follow him. Lu Li walked for thousands of miles to the south. He crushed a jade talisman to make sure that most of the small beasts were following him. Een Tian Fan was alerted. He nodded to Een Rulan and said, Lu Li has made it. It is our turn now. Okay. The group of people flew up, not daring to be too fast. They prepared to work together to attack one of the fish monsters and test out their battle prowess. Arriving at the edge of the frigid lake, the 2 strange fishes were immediately alarmed. The water within the frigid lake surged and 2 water dragons burst out. Next, 2 gigantic ferocious beasts soared into the sky. A tyrannical aura spread out and the 2 strange fishes roared furiously at the sky. The roar of the strange fishes was strange. It was earth-shattering. Even Lu Li could hear it from the distance. There seemed to be some fundamental principle of space in the roar, because they felt their speed was affected. Phew, the 2 fishes were fast. They approached them in an instant. When they were ready to attack, the scales on the 2 fishes stood up and many small holes appeared. Then, a cold current sprayed out from their bodies, covering an area with a radius of more than 30 miles. Fall back! Een Tian Fan shouted. The bronze in his hand glared and the glow spread out to keep the cold current at bay. Enrulin did the same. She stepped back with the others while the bronze in En Tianfan's hand grew into a hill and smashed at one of the strange fishes. Luli once consumed the bronze, but he didn't know how to use it, nor could he exert its power. Waves of divine might pervaded the air. It was as heavy as the blue dome of heaven and as lofty as an enormous mountain. Bronze flew past, causing space to tremble. Waves of oppressive aura pressed down on one's heart and lungs. If there were ordinary Third Tribulation martial artists nearby, they would probably be crushed to death by the aura of the bronze. Coo, a look of terror appeared in the eyes of one of the strange fish. Its scales suddenly fell off and turned into black light that filled the sky as it shot towards Gutong. Its speed was so fast that it could not be seen clearly. All that could be seen were rays of black light. The black light continuously struck the bronze, producing a series of muffled sounds. There was also a black light that shot towards Enrulin and the others. Enrulin took out her holy weapon fragment to resist the attack. The others retreated as they fought back, but some of them were too slow and were hit by the black light. Someone cried out in pain. En Tianfan looked over and saw a man's legs were cut off. He gasped. Those strange fishes were really powerful. En Tianfan put on a silver armor again. The armor was covered with dense divine patterns. It was a high-level armor that was worth 10 billion divine stones. Not even the En family had that many. Enrulin also had a silver armor over her body. She had become an awe-inspiring goddess of war. Enrulin and En Tianfan both controlled their holy weapon fragments, aiming at one strange fish each. With the two of them taking the brunt of the attack, the others successfully retreated. They began to attack the strange fishes from other directions to distract them. Boom! Gutong and the strange fish collided. The strange fish swung its long tail to attack, but its tail was shattered by Gutong. The strange fish let out a mournful cry, and then its body emitted a surging cold air. Coo, in the distance, the water in the pond surged as three strange fishes dashed out. En Tianfan and Enrulin did not dare to prolong the fight. They attacked with their holy weapon fragments and retreated quickly. Coo! The five strange fishes charged at them furiously. However, after chasing for thousands of miles, there was a sudden flash of light in the mountain below. Then, there was a red net in the sky. This was the divine pattern dojo that Lu Hai had set up. It was also a strategy that they had discussed earlier. They would lure the strange fishes over, trap them with the divine patterns, and then kill them slowly. Coo! The five strange fishes dashed around inside. But every time they hit the red net, they would retreat in pain. As the number one among the younger generation of the Lu family, Lu Hai was quite good at divine patterns. The divine patterns that he had set up could trap the five strange fishes. Kill! En Tianfan and the others were energized. He and Enrulin made the holy weapon fragments smaller and flew in through the gaps of the red net. They began to attack from a distance. The others used their own skills or treasures to attack the strange fishes from a distance. Whoosh, the scales of the strange fishes stood up. Cold air gushed out and froze the surroundings. The scales also turned into black light and attacked them. These strange fishes were very strange. After their scales were shot out, they could regrow and attack continuously. The divine patterns below glowed. Then, red shields flashed in the air to block the black scales. This was another divine pattern that Lu Hai had set up for defense. The black streams of light could easily shatter the blood-red shields. The problem was that the shields could continuously condense and weaken the black scales' power over and over again. Therefore, when the black scales reached the front of the crowd, they were no longer as powerful. Great! They were energized. Now, they didn't have to worry about their own safety. They could attack with all their strength. These strange fishes were powerful, but they could still kill them with their continuous attack. Boom, boom, boom. The two saint artifact fragments were extremely tyrannical. Every time they struck the strange black fish, a bloody hole would appear. The two of them first locked onto one of the strange fish, and very quickly, the two fish were covered in bloody holes. Their auras were clearly weakening. Yin Rui and the others attacked the other three strange fishes. Although they were not as fierce as Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan, they could still cause continuous damage to the three strange fishes. Lu Hai lurked nearby and watched the battle closely. He had been using the divine patterns to help the others attack. Without his help, Yin Tianfan and the others would not have it so easy. Some of them might even die. Boom! An hour later, two strange fishes were killed. The remaining three were covered with cuts and bruises. After Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan joined in, the result was decided. Great! Since they could kill two, they could kill dozens of them. When all the strange fishes were killed, the thousands of divine medicines would be at their fingertips. Boom, boom, boom. Chapter 2382. Luli was relieved to hear that. He circled around with the white beast at the south. The dragon fight could last for several hours before the dragon fight became weak. If they were still not done after 6 to 8 hours, Luli would have to get rid of the white beasts and find a place to rest and recover. Yin Tianfan and the others took a break to clean up the battlefield. At the same time, they asked Lu Hai to check the dojo. Making sure that everything was fine, Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan took action. This time, only the two of them would take action. Since the battlefield was here, Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan were going to lure the fish over. It would be pointless for the others to go and they would be in danger. They might as well bide their time here. Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan went to lure the fish over carefully. Their psychic power was locked on to 6 fish. When the fish were alarmed, they went back the way they came. Because they were fast, the fish caught up with them. But Lu Hai and Yin Rulan were only 3,000 miles away. They arrived in a blink. When the two of them flew past the area of the Divine Rune Dojo, the fish chased after them. Lu Hai immediately released the Divine Runes, trapping the 6 fish inside. Once they were trapped, the rest would be easy. Yin Rui and the others rushed out and began to attack. In an hour, all 6 fish were killed. Can you trap 10 fish? Yin Tianfan asked Lu Hai when the battlefield was cleaned up. Yin Tianfan shook his head. 8 at most. Those beasts are too big. It will be difficult to trap more. Okay. Rulan, we will lure 8 fish over. Yin Tianfan was worried that Luli would be in danger if he stalled too long. He decided to end the fight quickly. There were only dozens of fish. If they were fast, they could kill them all in a couple of hours. This time, Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan lured 8 fish over. As long as their psychic power was locked on to the fish, they would be alarmed and the fish would come after them. He repeated the same old trick and repeated it again. 4 hours later, Yin Tianfan and the others had killed more than 30 fish. There should be only 30 to 40 fish in the pond. Another 4 to 6 hours should be enough. Luli, on the other hand, could not stand it anymore. The period of weakness was coming. Once he forced himself into it, he would be weak for a long time. He would have to sleep for at least 2 to 3 days. Although he could hide in the distant Heaven Pearl and have the Phantom King, Wind Devil Beast, and Blood Fairy protect him, there were still too many uncontrollable factors. Therefore, Luli chose to run towards the south with a group of small beasts. He wanted to lure them far away so that they wouldn't return to the frigid pond. Then, he would speed up and get rid of them. Luli's running at full speed had attracted many small white beasts from the south. More and more small white beasts were running with him. It was as if Luli had become the king of beasts. If one were to look down from the sky, they would be able to see an extremely spectacular scene. A person was running at the very front, and behind him was an endless stream of small white beasts. They covered the mountains and plains, and there was no end in sight. After 300,000 miles, Luli sped up and got rid of the white beast easily. He found a cave and released the Ghost King and Blood Fairy. Then, he closed his eyes and sat down to rest. He hadn't reached his weakest moment yet, so it was easy for him to recover at this moment. He wouldn't fall into a coma and fall into a deep sleep. He should be able to recover after resting for half a day. The small white beasts that Luli got rid of were going back the way they came. But they were not going fast. Luli did not lure the small white beasts far away. It would take them at least half a day to get back to the frigid pond. By then, the battle at the frigid pond would have been over. The frigid pond was going well. With the help of the divine patterns, Fan and the others were not under too much pressure. They lured the small white beasts over and over again to trap and kill them. If everything went smoothly, the battle would be over in 2 hours. Fan and the others did not check carefully. That being said, Fan believed that there were only a dozen or so fish in the frigid pond. It was easy for them to go in 2 groups. The mountains nearby were tainted with blood, all from the fish. Since the fish were large, naturally there would be more blood. Let's go. Fan killed another group without taking a break. He and Rulin went on to lure more fish. This time they lured 8 fish away. It took them an hour to finish the job. The last group. Fan shouted. Everyone was invigorated. Even though they had been fighting for a long time, they were not exhausted. That being said, after killing the last group, the mission would be accomplished and there would be no more danger. Fan and Rulin went to check around. They were relieved to make sure that there were only 6 fish in the last group. They swaggered over to lure all the fish away. Boom, boom, boom. It was another round of attacks. This time, everyone's attack speed was even faster. Soon, all of the strange fish were covered with wounds. They had already killed 4 of them, and there were only 2 left. Those 2 were also covered with wounds. Rulin had put away her holy weapon fragment and handed the last 2 fish to Fan. The other 2 who were wounded stopped attacking as well. They were ready to heal. Right at that moment, there came some noises from the distance. Fan and Rulin's expressions changed. They checked with psychic power. They were shocked to see a group of people coming from the distance. Song Long and the others had come at this moment. There were only a few of them, and 2 of them were wounded. The 2 fish were not killed, and they were still exhausted. Fight? There was no way they could win. It was very likely that everyone would die here. It would be difficult to escape. They could vaguely hear noises from the left and right. Song Long might have made some arrangements. In other words, Song Long had already found out that they were here and was ambushing them. Song Long and the others did not have many people left. There should only be 30 to 40 people left. However, the strong ones were not dead. It was enough to kill them easily. Based on Tianfan's understanding of Song Long, he must have made a very perfect arrangement. Therefore, it was more likely that they would die if they escaped. Fan and Rulin looked at each other and made up their minds. Fan turned to Lu Hai and asked, "Is there any hope of holding on for a few hours?" "There should be no problem," Lu Hai said with a serious expression. There was not only one divine rune dojo. There were 4, 2 of which were defensive runes. They were afraid of being besieged by the fish or the small white beasts, so they had set up these 2 defensive runes. Okay. Fan ignored the warriors who were rushing over. He controlled the ancient bronze to attack the 2 fish. After killing the 2 fish, he shouted, "Go in. Lu Hai, open the divine rune dojo. Qing Rue, inform our people to come and help." If they fought, they would die. If they escaped, the possibility of dying was very high. Therefore, there was only one way left, which was to wait for reinforcements. When the rest of the people from the family came, they could rest for a while and restore their peak combat strength. When everyone else came, they would work together to kill the people from the Tsang family. Yin Chungrui crushed 3 jade talismans in a row to inform their people to come. This was the pre-agreed secret signal. Yin Chungrui thought for a while and asked, "Should we inform Elder Lu?" "Elder Lu?" Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan frowned slightly. Then Yin Tianfan said, "Let's inform him. Elder Lu is a very magical person. If he can come, it will be of great help to us." Chapter 2383. Yin Tianfan had made a deal with the others. Every secret signal was different. The signal that Yin Tianfan sent out meant that they were in danger and were in dire need of help. There were 8 of them here, and they were all the best young masters and young ladies of their respective families. If the 8 of them died, the more than a dozen nearby regions would be shaken. When the dozens of people received the message, they were all taken aback. They rushed over at once. If the 8 of them died, they could not imagine how furious their family patriarchs would be when they returned. The jade talisman on Lu Li's waist was broken as well. He had not recovered yet. He opened his eyes weakly and took a look. A glint of doubt rose in his eyes. Yin Tianfan had sent him a signal and everything was fine. It had been a long time. Most of the fish monsters should have been killed. Why would he send out an emergency signal now? Was there a king of fish monsters? Or was Tsong Long here? Either way, Lu Li could not sit around and do nothing. What was he doing here? He was here to help the Yin family. If Yin Tianfan and the others were dead, what was the point of him coming here and obtaining many treasures? Besides, Yin Rulan had done him a great favor. He had to go even if he were dying, not to mention that he was weak now. Therefore, he flew up at once and let out the Phantom King to take him to the frigid pond. Along the way, Lu Li consumed some herbs. Normally, he would not be so extravagant, but now, he could not care less. He was a bit far away from the frigid pond. Previously, he had been running for several hours to lure the white beast away. He was still weak. He could take the time to recover on the back of the Phantom King. He was not in a hurry. Yin Tianfan and the others should be able to survive for a couple of hours. Lu Li knew about the dojos Lu Hai had built and Blood Fairy had checked. The dojos were strong. The Phantom King was faster than Lu Li. It would only take Lu Li 2 hours to get there. In 2 hours, Lu Li should be able to recover. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Since the Phantom King was flying in a straight line, he inevitably alarmed many white beasts along the way. The Phantom King was so fast that he could be compared to the later stage of the Fourth Tribulation. The white beasts could not catch up. The Phantom King turned into a gust of wind, and countless little beasts chased after it. However, they gradually disappeared into the distance. Lu Li sat on the Phantom Master's shoulder with his legs crossed, consuming the elixir. His heart was as calm as an ancient well. The space here was very unique, and the divine imprints here were very powerful. He didn't dare to use his void-traversing ability, and could only rely on flying. The Spectre King's speed was the fastest. Therefore, if he had rushed over at such a fast speed, Yin Tianfan, Yin Rulan, and the others would have already died. This was fate. Yin Tianfan was still able to hold on. Lu Hai's Divine Rune Defense Dojo was very strong. The net released a dazzling red light, turning into a blood-red light shield that enveloped the 8 of them. Song Long and the others were outside the barrier. They were currently using various treasures and abilities to attack the barrier. Song Long had even taken out a saint weapon fragment to attack it, but the result was that the barrier could not be broken. Song Yen. After attacking for a while, Song Long became a little anxious. He knew that there were definitely more people from the Yin family. It was impossible that there were only a few left. After all, they were the first to enter, and only 20 or so of them had died. The Yin family who entered later wouldn't be so useless. They just happened to pass by and heard the sounds of battle. If they missed such a good opportunity, they would be idiot. If they killed Yin Tianfan and the others, the Yin family and the other big families would suffer heavy losses. These were the most outstanding disciples of the younger generation. Not only were they extremely talented, but they also used up countless top-notch resources of the big families. Not to mention anything else, just killing these 8 people would give them at least 2 saint weapon fragments. This was a huge gain. Also, Song Long had coveted Yin Ruolan for many years. Now that there was a chance to fulfill his long-cherished wish, how could he not be anxious? These divine rune defense dojo can be broken. Song Yen had already checked. He smiled bitterly and said, "But it will take time to break it. You guys can attack it faster. I will probably need 4 to 6 hours to break it. You guys can attack it for another 4 hours." Song Long asked, "Can't we break it while attacking?" "We can't." Song Yen pointed to the bottom of the light shield and said, "Brother Long, look at the bottom. There is a red stream of light rotating. That is the geocentric chi absorbed from the ground. If we want to break this divine rune defense dojo, we have to cut off the geocentric chi, so it will take some time. Your continuous attacks will consume more energy than the speed at which the geocentric chi is absorbed. You guys can break it after some time. I don't need to waste my energy." "I see." Song Long sighed helplessly. He could only continue to attack. The tile in his hand flew out again and again, hitting the light shield. The rest of the people were also attacking with all their strength. The attacks of dozens of people were very fierce. Song Yen took out some formation stones and set them up nearby. He just said that he didn't want to waste his energy, but now he was obviously setting up divine runes. No one knew what he was doing. Yin Tianfan and the others were all sitting on the ground calmly to rest and recover. Lu Hai was always paying attention to the situation of the divine runes. It was meaningless for them to worry. They might as well conserve their energy and build up their strength. They could either fight to the death when the formation was broken or wait for Yin Tianfan's men to arrive and attack from both sides. The place Lu Li took them to was not very far away. Yin family warriors were already nearby, but they didn't attack recklessly. One of them had the bearing of a general. He was Hu Qing, a young master of the Hu family, an affiliated family of the Yin family. He was not the most powerful warrior, but he was wise and steady. Yin Tianfan had already instructed them to listen to Hu Qing's orders. Hu Qing didn't disappoint Yin Tianfan. When he arrived, he didn't send someone to rescue them. Instead, he sent a young master who was proficient in stealth to check out the situation. After he made sure that Yin Tianfan and the others were not in danger, Hu Qing was even more cautious. "Brother Qing, what are you waiting for?" Some people were confused. They had more people than the Tsang family and more powerful warriors. They should have a good chance of winning if they rushed over. What was Hu Qing waiting for? "No hurry." Hu Qing shook his head. He asked the young master who was proficient in stealth to continue to check out the situation nearby. Hu Qing explained, "Young Master Fan and the others are not in danger. What are we rushing for? Let's find out the situation first and choose the best time to make a move. If we don't do it this time, we must kill every one of the Tsang family." If they could kill Tsang Long and the others, they could not only get rid of a group of enemies, but also all the elixirs and treasures here could be theirs. Nobody else could compete for them anymore. Nothing. After a while, the warrior who went to check came back and answered with certainty. There was no ambush within a radius of 3,000 miles. Tsang Long and the others were all here. Chapter 2384. Hu Qing and the others are here. A jade talisman in Yin Tianfan's hand broke. Then another jade talisman broke. His face was expressionless, but his heart was filled with joy. They had more people than Tsang Long, so even if they couldn't win, they could retreat safely. He immediately sent a message to Yin Ruolan, Yin Chengrue, and the others secretly. At the same time, He told them not to reveal any abnormalities because Hu Qing had sent a secret signal. They were to wait for the order and attack together. Hu Qing's secret signal woke Yin Tianfan up. Since they had a certain advantage, why not turn this advantage into a victory and perfectly kill Song Long and the others? Yin Tianfan immediately sent voice transmissions to the others to discuss how to start the battle. They wanted to see how they could kill everyone without suffering too many losses. After a while, they finally decided to attack the moment the divine glyph broke. Because at that moment, Song Long and the others' attention would be attracted by them. Hu Qing and the others' surprise attack could catch Song Long and the others off guard and produce the best result. However, there was some risk in doing this. If they couldn't withstand the wave of attacks from Song Long and the others, they were likely to die. But how could there be a big gain without paying a price? Yin Tianfan and the others decided to take a gamble. If they won, they would make a big profit. Time passed bit by bit, and soon 4 hours had passed. The divine glyph light shield was also in danger and could break at any time. Yin Tianfan and the others were still sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed. Their faces were calm, and only Lu Hai had been nervously watching the situation of the divine glyph light shield. Everyone's combat power, except for the one with a broken leg, had almost recovered to the peak. Various tactical deductions had already been discussed, and everything was waiting for the moment the light shield broke. "It's going to break," Lu Hai's voice sounded. Yin Tianfan, Yin Rulan, and the others opened their eyes almost at the same time. Yin Qingrui's spatial divine tool lit up, and Lu Hai and the martial artist with a broken leg were taken into the spatial divine tool. These two people's combat power was relatively weak. If they were left outside, it was very likely that they would die. So when Yin Tianfan discussed with the others, he didn't plan to let them participate in the battle. Buzz! Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan's battle armors appeared. Both of them took out their sacred weapon fragments and a defensive treasure respectively. Yin Tianfan took out a shield that had malicious ghost patterns on it, while Yin Rulan took out an animal skin. The two of them stood at the front of the formation, while the rest of the people stood behind them in an arrow formation. Bang! Yin Tianfan crushed a jade talisman in his hand. This was a signal for Hu Qing and the others to take action. After crushing the jade talisman, Yin Tianfan and the others made their move. The light barrier had yet to shatter. Boom! Under the joint attack of Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan, the light shield instantly exploded and Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan dashed towards Song Long like two sharp arrows. The few people behind him followed him. Everyone turned into a sharp knife, piercing towards Song Long. Song Long and the others had been paying attention to the light barrier. They guessed that the light barrier would shatter after a few more attacks. However, they did not expect that Yin Tianfan and the others would make their move first. They shattered the light barrier and immediately attacked Song Long. Song Long's side had also deduced the battle tactic. Therefore, although everyone was a little shocked, they immediately reacted. Everyone's figures flashed, and they surrounded Yin Tianfan and the others. Song Long, die. Yin Tianfan held the ancient bronze in his hand and looked majestic. He was wearing silver battle armor and looked awe-inspiring. The ancient bronze in his hand glowed brightly, making him look like an invincible god. The ancient bronze in his hand expanded rapidly and pressed down like a huge mountain. Waves of terrifying prowess spread out, causing the martial artists who were rushing over to feel suffocated. Yin Rulan took out her own sacred weapon fragment and flew out with the ancient bronze. They also expanded rapidly and pressed down like two meteorites, causing the spatial zone to shake and the heaven and earth to tremble. Retreat. Song Long and Song He both had sacred weapon fragments. The problem was that the two of them could not use their sacred weapon fragments to attack Yin Tianfan and the other's sacred weapon fragment. Otherwise, if the four sacred weapon fragments clashed together, the impact would tear many of them into pieces. Avoid the attack. It was difficult for Een Tianfan and the others to break out of the encirclement anyway. Sooner or later, they would all be killed. Song Long and Song He immediately retreated to the sides. At the same time, murderous intent flashed in their eyes, and they attacked the people behind Een Tianfan and Een Rulan. At the same time, the martial artists from all directions attacked in a frenzy. In an instant, the sky was filled with flying treasures and light beams. Een Tianfan and Een Rulan had to stop moving forward. Otherwise, the people behind them would be killed. Actually, their goal was not to break out of the encirclement but to attract everyone's attention so that Hu Qing and the others could launch a sneak attack. As long as they could hold on for 1 or 2 seconds, Hu Qing and the others would be able to catch Song Long and the others off guard, and then kill them. Boom, boom, boom. Een Tianfan's shield grew larger. Many ghostly shadows flashed on the shield, releasing an aura as thick as the earth. He blocked the attacks from Song Long and Song He. On the other side, Een Rulan's hide also grew larger. Like a huge quilt, it covered the people on the other side. Bang! Song Long took out a tile. Although Een Tianfan's shield was strong, it was still broken. The violent energy surged and Een Tianfan was sent flying. Blood gushed out. Een Tianfan's bronze sword swept across the sky and crushed a member of the Tsang family into minced meat. On the other side, Song He attacked Een Rulan's hide with the shard of the holy weapon. Countless people attacked together. The hide was also turned into powder. Lady Lan dodged. Seeing Song He's holy weapon shard flying towards Een Rulan, a determined look appeared in his eyes. He used his body to crash into the shard. He turned his head to look at Een Rulan when he hit the fragment of the holy weapon. His eyes were filled with a strong sense of adoration and unwavering determination. Fong Qi. Een Rulan's body trembled and she shouted anxiously. Unfortunately, the next second, the shard of the holy weapon shard tore that young master into pieces. He died without a whole body. Kill! Een Rulan's eyes turned red. Endless killing intent rose from her body. She controlled the shard of the holy weapon to attack Song He. On the other side, Song He could have killed more people. However, he could only defend himself. Otherwise, he would be killed by the furious Een Rulan. Kill! The people from the Tsang family rushed over. No one would miss such a good opportunity. If they didn't kill Een Tianfan and the others, they would be letting down the heavens. Boom, boom, boom. However, at this moment, countless sounds of air breaking could be heard from the southwest. Following that, dozens of people rushed over like arrows. Before they could even get close, dozens of light rays shot over. Boom, boom, boom. Hu Qing and the others arrived. Under the sneak attack of the dozens of people, 4 to 5 people from the Tsang family were blasted into a mist of blood. Song Long and Song He's expressions changed. Their eyes flickered and they hesitated. They didn't know if they should continue attacking or retreat. Hee. Song Yen, a divine inscription expert from the Tsang family, suddenly laughed. He shouted, "Brother Long, you guys continue attacking. I will block those people. Is the time it takes for an incense to burn enough?" "Yes, kill." Chapter 2385. Song Yen had been setting it up. Song Long was puzzled. If Song Yen didn't want to break the formation, then what was the point of setting it up? Now he realized that Song Yen had set it up for this moment. He had prepared a way out and set up some divine glyphs to protect them. Buzz, when Song Long rushed out, the ground lit up with red light. It looked like fire dragons were moving on the ground. Soon, the fire dragons rushed up into the sky and intersected with each other, forming a light shield that covered an area of 100 miles. This divine glyph's shield was not very strong because Song Yen hadn't set it up for a long time and it was very well hidden. But it was enough to hold on for 5 minutes. Song Long was confident that he could kill all of them in that time. Oh no! Een Tianfan, Een Ruolan, and the others changed their expressions. They had planned to kill Song Long and the others, but they didn't expect that they had set up something else. If they were killed, Hu Qing and the others wouldn't be able to escape death either. The devil would rise 10 times as the righteous rose 1 foot. Song Long had wanted to kill them, but they set up a trap to kill them instead. But now, he had been trapped by someone again. There were originally 9 people here. Lu Hai and another person were put into a spatial divine item. Now that one was dead, there were only 6 left. Een Tianfan was injured again. They wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Kill! Een Tianfan went crazy. He was ready to risk everything. The worst that could happen was death. If he could drag Song Long down with him, his death would be worth it. Een Ruolan was attacking Song He in a frenzy. Een Tianfan rushed toward Song Long with his bronze spear. He didn't care about the people around him at all. He just wanted to drag Song Long down with him. Boom, boom, boom. The other 4 went crazy as well. They didn't even try to defend themselves. They rushed into the crowd, trying to drag some people down with them. Lunatics! Song Long and Song He wouldn't risk their lives. Song Yen said he could hold on for 5 minutes, so he must be able to. Therefore, they weren't in a hurry. They just needed to kill them slowly. Boom, boom, boom. Outside, Hu Qing and the others flew over. When they saw a blood-red barrier of light enveloping Een Tianfan and the others, they panicked and immediately attacked the barrier of light in a frenzy. Unfortunately, none of them had a holy weapon shard, and their attack power was not particularly terrifying. Therefore, even though he was attacking with all his might, he still needed some time to break through the blood-red light barrier. After 5 breaths of time, within the blood-red light barrier, a young master was killed, and the rest were injured. Een Tianfan's entire body was dyed red with blood. The armor on his left shoulder was shattered, and his bones were broken. Een Ruolan fared slightly better because Song He knew that Song Long wanted to capture Een Ruolan alive. Therefore, he didn't fight Een Ruolan to the death and only tried his best to block Een Ruolan's attack. Once Een Tianfan and the others were dead, Een Ruolan would be the only one left. Brother Fan, hang in there. Miss Lan, hold on. We will be able to break this light barrier soon. Song Long, how dare you kill my brother Fan? I will kill you all. Song Long, if you dare to kill brother Fan and the others, our Een clan will fight to the death with Yortsong clan. The people outside were burning with anger, but other than bombarding the light barrier with all their might, they could only shout like this. It was obvious that their shouts were meaningless. Song Long and the others wouldn't listen at all. Fight to the death? The Song family and the Een family were already in a fight to the death. They were evenly matched and neither could destroy the other. Otherwise, the other would have been wiped out a long time ago. Boom, another one was killed. The Song family paid a heavy price as well. 7 or 8 of them were injured and 1 was killed. None of the Een family warriors wanted to live. The lethality they unleashed before death was horrifying. Brother Tianyang, a young lady cried. The one that was killed was from her family. The others were in despair. The light barrier would take the time for at least half an incense stick to burn to be broken. However, everyone inside was injured and could die at any moment. They could not hold on for that long. Whoosh! Right at that moment, there came a noise from the distance. A black shadow dashed over at a horrifying speed. Before he got close, a surge of violent chi and energy spread out. Hu Qing and the others were alarmed. They looked over and their eyes glowed. Hu Qing shouted, "It's Patriarch Lu!" Patriarch Lu? Many people turned around, overjoyed. Lu Li had come at such a critical moment. Even though Lu Li was only at the peak of the second tribulation realm, he had brought them so many surprises along the way. Therefore, they were hopeful that Lu Li could come. Spread out. Lu Li had already checked with psychic power. He had some idea of the situation after a quick check. It was an emergency and he had no time to explain. With a shout, many wind warcraft came out from the heaven separation bead. Spread out. Seeing so many wind warcraft, Hu Qing's eyes glowed and he shouted. He led everyone to the left side. As soon as they left, more than 100 wind warcraft's horns lit up and more than 100 beams of light shot out. Boom! The blood-red shield shook violently. It didn't crack, but it could not hold on much longer. The power of more than 100 wind warcraft attacking at the same time was too great. Lu Li, Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan looked back at the same time. They were overjoyed. Song Yan, Songlong and Kang, on the other hand, turned pale, especially when they saw more than 100 wind warcraft lined up around Lu Li. Retreat. Admittedly, Song Long was an ambitious man who knew when to yield and when to stand tall. Without any hesitation, a golden glare rose around him, and he sped up. He circled around and took in some warriors of the Tsang family. Then, he smashed at the shield with tiles. You want to leave? Yin Tianfan shouted and released a powerful attack. A huge beast whooshed out from the bronze armor and attacked Song Long's back. Hoi! A bead appeared in Song Long's hand. The bead flashed and exploded. A terrifying shockwave swept out in all directions, blocking the strange beast's path. But Song Long was not in a good state. He was smashed away and his armor was shattered. His back was badly mutilated and his bones were clearly broken. Poof! Song Long spat out some blood. Another 2 beads appeared in his hands and he threw them at Yin Tianfan and the others. Flames rose around him. His speed sped up and he vanished into the distance. Boom, boom, boom. Song Long only took some warriors with him, mostly from the Tsang family. There were 6 or 7 left. They ran to all sides at once, but the Yin family would not let them have their way. Hu Qing and the others dashed forward like tigers coming down from the mountains. Soon, those warriors died one by one, leaving only their bodies behind. Lu Li didn't attack or go after them. Song Long's speed could be compared to the later stage of the Fourth Tribulation. Not even the Ghost King could catch up with him. What was more, Lu Li couldn't kill so many warriors by himself. Not bad, not bad. Lu Li glanced over and nodded. Even though some powerful warriors of the Yin family had passed away, at least Yin Rulan, Yin Tianfan and Yin Qingrui were still alive. Otherwise, Lu Li would not be able to explain to the crippled Zen master when he got out. P.S. He has recovered but he is still not in a good state. That being said, there must be 5 chapters. Chapter 2386. The battle was over. The Yin family lost 3 top young masters with high abilities and statuses. 2 of them were from other families, and 1 was from the Yin family. The Tsang family lost 17 warriors. It seemed that the Tsang family had gained the upper hand. However, the 17 warriors that died were weak and their statuses were far lower than the Tsang family. Therefore, the Tsang family suffered a great loss. It was supposed to be a good plan. However, because of Tsang Yan's formation, Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan almost lost their lives. If it were not for the fact that Lu Li arrived in time, everyone inside would have been killed. Lu Li had no other choice. He was too far away and the Phantom King did not stop to rest. He arrived at the critical moment. If he were any later, he would have to collect Yin Rulan's dead bodies. Hu Qing sent someone to check nearby. He was sure that the Tsang family was gone and that Song Long had run away. They were drowning in sorrow. Yin Rulan, in particular, could not hold back her tears when she thought of the young master that died for her. Lu Li's mind was weighed down as well. It was his idea to collect the elixirs here. However, 3 top young masters died because of him. Naturally, he felt guilty. Patriarch Lu, go and collect the elixirs. Yin Tianfan's injuries were serious. His face was pale. Noticing Lu Li's expression, Yin Tianfan said, Lu Li, don't overthink. It was my idea to stay and collect the elixirs. If we can get some valuable treasures later, we will make it up to them. Okay. Luli nodded and went to the frigid pond. There were no more fish monsters in the pond, but some small white beasts had returned. Luli collected the elixirs quickly. It took him more than 2 hours to collect all the elixirs. Let's go. All the corpses had been collected, and the divine materials on the corpses of the fish monsters had been collected. Luli and the others left quickly. Many were injured and needed rest. After all, this was a battlefield and it was not safe. They traveled for millions of miles. Luli dealt with all the small white beasts along the way. Several hours later, they stopped in a valley. Luli took the initiative to be on guard so that Een Tianfan and the others could rest. Een Rulan had been in low spirit. Luli could not comfort her. He had to ask Een Tianfan and the others to comfort her. They had recuperated in the valley for half a month, and everyone had recovered from their injuries. Only Een Rualan's mood hadn't recovered yet. Luli gave all the elixirs to Een Tianfan for him to distribute. Een Tianfan picked out the body-strengthening pellets and gave them to Luli. Then, he gave the rest to the families of the deceased warriors. Naturally, no one had any objections. This compensation was actually not enough. Een Tianfan had also said that if he could get his hands on these treasures, he would definitely give them more compensation. The body refinement elixir was useless to the others, so Luli didn't refuse. He did not say anything, but secretly made up his mind that if he had the chance, he would definitely kill Cang Long and the others to avenge them. Everyone continued forward, but this time, they were much quieter, and the cheerful and relaxed atmosphere from before was nowhere to be seen. Even when they found many divine medicines along the way, no one smiled at all. After walking for half a month, they didn't meet Cang Long and the others again. They didn't find any other strange beasts either. The only thing they could see were countless small white beasts. Where's the exit? This was the question that had been bothering them. They realized that they had been on the same path many times. Clearly, they had been on the same path, which meant that there was a powerful formation of illusion leading them to go around in circles. It was just that this place was so vast that they didn't notice it at first. They did get a lot of elixirs. Altogether, they had more than 3,000. That being said, no matter how many elixirs they had, it was pointless. Families were not in need of divine stones. Elixirs could be bought with divine stones. What they wanted was the super treasures and skills that the ancient Saint Emperor gave to the Master of the Hall of Seven Tones. Moving on, they found fewer and fewer elixirs. Many paths had been on the same path. It was understandable that there were fewer elixirs. Another half a month later, they still didn't run into Cang Long and the others. They might be hiding in some secluded place, or they had found the exit and gone to the next level. Een Tianfan didn't know much about divine glyph. He had to pin his hopes on Luli and Lu Hai. Luli didn't know much about divine glyphs either. He had to pin his hope on Blood Fairy. If there is a huge formation of illusion, Lu Hai said, if we want to find the exit, we must find the core. This is such a large formation. There must be more than one core. This is tricky. We might be trapped in here for years or even decades. Lu Hai's words weighed on everyone's mind. Luli told Blood Fairy what Lu Hai said and she agreed. Yes, there are more than 1 or 2 cores here. I think that pond is one of them. The place where you collected hundreds of elixirs might be one as well. I need to repeatedly investigate and calculate. Only after I find 3 to 5 formation cores can I hope to find a way out. Move on. Look around and observe. Luli had no other choice but to let them move on. At the same time, he began to observe the surrounding terrain, looking for differences and other core. Another half a month later, Luli found a strange terrain. It was a valley. There were many white animals in the valley. There were many traces of excavation. Clearly, there were many elixirs here. Cang Long must have dug them out. This might be a core. Lu Li also found bodies of another kind of beasts. There were more than a dozen of them, but they were all killed. This should be the core. Blood Fairy said, now we have found 3 core. If we can find 1 or 2 more, we can figure out the way to the door of birth. 6 days later, Lu Li found another strange terrain. There were no elixirs here, not even a white animal. This was a barren mountain. The Xian Qi in heaven and earth was thin. This is another core. Blood Fairy went out to explore, then said confidently, this could be the core of the Matrix Eye. There is no spiritual Qi of heaven and earth here because the Matrix Eye leads to the outside. Master, wait here. I will go and take a closer look. Okay. Lu Li nodded. He told the others to rest and cultivate nearby while he and Lu Hai wandered around. The more Lu Hai looked, the more he felt it was strange. He nodded and said, there is something wrong here. If we can see through this place, we might be able to find the way out. With that said, Lu Hai cupped his fists to Lu Li and wandered around on his own. Lu Li wandered around for a while. All of a sudden, he sensed something. He flew up to the sky and looked down at the mountain from above. What? Lu Li was surprised as he looked on. There were dozens of hills, ditches, valleys, ridges, and so on. When he looked at it from above, he vaguely saw a very mysterious picture. He had seen this kind of picture before. It was the one formed by traces of the Great Path. At the moment, the mountains and rivers gave him the same feeling. Pattern of principles. Chapter 2387. Lu Li flew around the hill slowly. He could see everything clearly. Gradually, an abstruse picture emerged in his mind. He had given the painting to Blood Fairy and was studying it himself. He had also given it to Lu Hai. One more person would always mean one more hope. Lu Hai was overjoyed when he received the picture as if it was a treasure. He could see something as well, but not as deeply as Lu Li. Lu Li could see it so thoroughly and draw a picture. Lu Hai didn't wander around anymore. He sat on the ground to study the diagram. Lu Li flew slowly in the sky with his eyes closed. He used the trace of Tao to sense everything on the ground. 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, 10 days. Lu Li had been flying in the sky with his eyes closed. He felt like an idiot. Lu Hai did not find anything, nor did Blood Fairy send him any message. Yin Tianfan and the others knew that this place must be important since Lu Li and Lu Hai were here. They did not move. They just sat nearby to cultivate and rest. Another half a month passed by. Finally, Lu Li opened his eyes. He gazed to the west, deep in thought. He seemed to have understood something about the diagram, but he was not sure. Blood Fairy. He said to Blood Fairy, I can tell that the exit is to the west. It is in that valley, the core of the formation. What do you think? 70%. Blood Fairy replied, I think so as well. There is a 70% chance that it is in that valley and 30% in the frigid pond. But there are no divine glyphs on either side. I have checked and there is no exit. That is the strange part. Lu Li nodded. I have checked those 2 places carefully. There is nothing wrong. Never mind. Let's go there and have a look. Lu Li made up his mind. He walked over to Lu Hai and asked, Young Master Lu, have you found anything? Lu Hai came back to his senses. He shook his head with a frown. The picture is abstruse. I can only understand part of it. I will need time to fully understand it. Well, Patriarch Lu, have you learned the picture? I am not sure, but I want to try. Lu Li patted Lu Hai's shoulder. Let's go. Let's leave this place. Lu Hai's eyes glowed. He followed Lu Li down the mountain at once. Yin Tianfan and the others were alerted and stood up at once. After Lu Li finished his explanation, the others ran after him. It was not too far away. After 2 days, Lu Li and the others arrived at the valley. There used to be many divine medicines in this canyon, but they were all plucked by Tsang Long and the others. There were also some strange beasts here, but they were also killed. There were many small white beasts here. Luli asked Yin Tianfan and the others to set up camp nearby while he went into the valley with Blood Fairy. There were still thousands of white beasts here. When Luli arrived, all the white beasts were alarmed. At first, Luli ignored them. Later on, he grew annoyed. He let out the Phantom King and told it to kill all the white beasts. The white beast could break through the Phantom King's defense, but only bit by bit. When the Phantom King's injuries were more serious, Luli would throw him into the Spirit Spring and the Phantom King would come back to life. The Phantom King's speed at killing the little beasts was simply too fast. In just 2 incense sticks worth of time, there was not a single little beast left in the vicinity. Yin Tianfan and the others had been sending people to check. They all came over when they saw that the little beasts were gone. Luli paid no attention to Yin Tianfan and the others. He wandered around with his eyes closed. The valley was deep, with a length of 300 miles. It was dim and dark. Anyone would feel uncomfortable in here. No divine patterns. Luli and Blood Fairy searched the valley but did not find any divine glyphs. Luli was puzzled. They could see the end of the valley. If there were no divine patterns, where was the exit? Is there something wrong with this valley? Lu Hai stood on the valley. He used psychic power to check again and again but found nothing. This was just an average valley. He could see through it at first glance. Luli believed in his own deduction. He closed his eyes and wandered around blindly, walking back and forth. He activated the trace of Great Path and did not miss a single spot. Whoosh! Blood Fairy checked the surroundings many times to make sure that there were no divine patterns or anything strange. She went back into Luli's body and continued to study the diagram Luli gave her. What is Patriarch Lu doing? Yin family warriors were confused to see Luli wandering around the valley like a wandering ghost. It would be understandable if there were divine patterns down there. They could say that Luli was deciphering the divine patterns. But there was nothing down there. It was just like any other valley. Was Luli pretending to be a ghost to scare people? 1 day, 2 days, 6 days. While Luli was wandering down there, he suddenly saw a flash of light. Following that, there was a slight fluctuation in space, which startled Lu Hai and the others. Luli opened his eyes at once and shouted, "Lu Hai, 9 steps and 18 steps, Palace of Yin and Yang." Buzzing, as soon as Luli finished his words, he vanished into the valley. The ripples in space disappeared as well. Apart from the fact that Luli was gone, there was no difference. What? All the people sitting cross-legged in the canyon stood up. Their eyes were filled with shock as if they had seen a ghost. A glow rose in Lu Hai's eyes. He said with excitement, "This is the exit. Patriarch Lu has found it. Let's go." Yin Tianfan waved his hand and dashed to where Luli disappeared. But when he arrived at where Luli was, nothing strange happened. Yin Tianfan was not teleported away. He hurriedly wandered around the vicinity, but after a few laps there were no changes. What? Yin Tianfan turned to Lu Hai, who said after some thoughts, "Brother Fan, don't panic. There is an invisible formation here. Patriarch Lu has told me about it. Let me think about it." Lu Hai closed his eyes and thought for the time for 1 incense stick to burn. Then, he opened his eyes and said with a grin, "Patriarch Lu, you really are a genius. Come with me. I have found the exit." A group of people immediately followed Lu Hai down the canyon. Lu Hai said solemnly, "Everyone, line up and follow my footstep. If you make a wrong move, you may not be able to go in. Remember every step I take. If you make a mistake, follow my steps again." They could not afford to be careless. After all, Lu Hai had gone in. If they made a wrong move, they could stay here forever. Therefore, they kept their eyes on Lu Hai. Lu Hai walked in front. His path was like a snake. He kept circling back and forth. After the time for one incense stick to burn, Lu Hai came back to where Luli was. Then, the space trembled and Lu Hai disappeared. Yin Tianfan followed Lu Hai and disappeared into the valley, without missing a step. The others were being careful. One after another, they were teleported away. Luli. When Yin Ruolin came in, she found herself in a valley. Luli was sitting in front of her. She put on a smile. It was the first time she smiled these days. Luli nodded with a smile. Then, he said bitterly, Song Long and the others have been here for a long time. All the treasures on this level may have been taken away by them. What are you afraid of? Yin Tianfan said coldly with killing intent. There are only about 30 of them. We have twice their number. If we can kill them, all the treasures will be ours. Chapter 2388. This was not an average valley. Lava was flowing down from the cliffs on 3 sides. The temperature of the valley was high. There was only one exit. Clearly, the other areas were off-limit. They had to go through the exit. Luli did not act rashly. He sent Blood Fairy to check at once. Lu Hai did the same as well. Yin Tianfan even sent someone to wander around the valley. The valley was vast. Apart from the scorching rocks, there was nothing else. Blood Fairy checked for a while. There were runes on the cliff. The exit was safe. Let's go to the exit. Luli asked Blood Fairy to go ahead in case Song Long and the others were ambushed. Song Yen had set up a rune that withstood the attacks from Hu Qing and the others for the time for half an incense stick to burn. It was said that Song Yen did it randomly. Song Yan's skill in runes must be impressive. The fact that the Song family could come in earlier than them meant that they had been here for a long time. If it was not by accident, then Song Yan's skill in runes must be unfathomable. The group of people did not stop and quickly left the valley. Yin Tianfan sent 2 martial artists who were proficient in the art of concealment to scout ahead while the rest of the people moved in a formation. Soon, they walked out of the valley. As expected, the terrain outside was a fiery red land. There were countless rivers of lava, dividing the entire land into pieces. Hot steam and smoke rose from the rivers of lava. Rivers of lava were everywhere. There were too many to count. As far as the eyes could see, it was like a red net covering the entire land. Be careful, Luli said with a frown. That is not regular lava. It is hot. If I fall into a river of lava, I don't think I can stand it, not even with my strong defense. Is it that scary? They looked at each other, speechless. They knew how strong Luli's body was. Not even the white beast could break it. How could the lava be so scary? Luli had a hunch that came from going through many life-threatening situations. He felt the lava was terrifying. Average warriors would not survive if they fell in. Luli told them not to move. He told Blood Fairy to go ahead and check, while he himself and Lu Hai did the same. Actually, even without Luli's reminder, everyone could feel the danger. The lava river was like a huge beast lurking in front of them. If they approached rashly, they could be in danger. An hour later, Blood Fairy's voice sounded. Master, you can't fly here. There are runes in the lava river. If you try to fly, the lava will attack you. We can't get close to the lava river, so it's better to keep a low profile and choose a path. Luli nodded. He felt it as well. Just now, when he tried to fly, the magma river nearby began to tremble. If he flew higher, he would be attacked by the magma. Lu Hai was still investigating. Seeing that Luli had stopped, Lu Hai asked, Patriarch Lu, have you found anything? I feel that this place is not simple. Yes, we can't fly here and we can't get close to the magma river. The rest of the places should be safe. Luli explained. Lu Hai sighed and said, Elder Lu, your attainments in divine inscriptions are beyond my reach. I only felt that it was dangerous, but I didn't expect that we couldn't fly. Luli smiled at the sincere look on Lu Hai's face. As far as Lu Hai could tell, He was a master of divine inscriptions. Luli waved his hand and said something to In Tianfan and the others. Then, he led the group forward. Blood Fairy led the way. They followed Lu Li's instructions and were about 100 feet away from the lava river. Someone tried to get close to the lava river, but the lava in the river surged. That person stepped back in fear. The group moved forward slowly. They had traveled for 300 miles. As long as they stayed away from the lava river, they would be safe. They didn't encounter any danger. Just like that, the group moved forward. Everything was peaceful. This place seemed to be boundless. As far as the eye could see, it was the same scenery. Apart from the brown-red soil and stones, there was only the lava river. Roar! After advancing for over an hour, a river of magma suddenly surged. Next, a gigantic beast roared out and a fierce and scorching aura spread out, causing some people to feel suffocated. Hoi In Tianfan reacted quickly. He dashed over and smashed at the beast with the bronze rod. That beast had just come out from the lava river when it was smashed down. Its head was broken. Roar! The giant beast rushed out again. This time, everyone could see it clearly. It was a fish-shaped creature. Its head was especially big, and the back of its body gradually became smaller. Its whole body was covered in red scales, and when it opened its mouth, sharp fangs could be seen. Die! In Tianfan flew away. Seeing that In Tianfan was flying high, Luli shouted at once, "Tianfan, don't fly too high. Don't get too close to the lava river." Splash! It was too late for Luli to say anything. The lava was surging over like dragons of fire. It was so fast that In Tianfan did not even have the time to run away. "Fall back!" Luli shouted. He and the others stepped back lest they would be enveloped by the lava. Luli believed that given In Tianfan's abilities, it would not be difficult for him to escape unscathed. At the very least, he would not die. Bang! In Tianfan used the ancient bronze strike once again, and the huge beast was completely killed. He himself was also enveloped by the lava. He used all his strength to activate the bronze rod, which emitted rays of light. At the same time, the patterns on his armor glowed. Whoosh! He stepped back quickly. Even so, by the time he came back, many parts of his armor had melted and smoke was rising from some parts of his body. Hiss hiss! In Tianfan gasped as the lava retreated. In Chengrai tended to his wounds at once. In Rulan said, "Luli, I told you not to fly in the air and stay away from the lava river. Why didn't you listen?" In Tianfan smiled in embarrassment. Luli said with a smile, "It's okay. We can test the power of the lava." Tianfan reacted fast. "But this armor is ruined. Do you have a spare?" "Yes." In Tianfan forced a smile. After a while, he put on a new armor, which was exactly the same as the old one. The In clan wasn't just an ordinary wealthy clan. Even such top-notch battle armors were given out in 2 pieces. Let's move on. After In Tianfan's wounds were healed, they moved on. Just now, there was a beast, but it was not strong. They could deal with it, so they were relieved. The lava was horrifying. As long as they stayed away from the lava river and didn't fly in the air, they would be safe. 6 hours later, everyone stood on a reddish-brown ground. All of them felt lost because there was no path ahead. 2 huge lava rivers crossed in front of them. If they wanted to go through, they would have to fly over the lava river. "There is a corpse." Hu Qing was leading someone to check. He suddenly pointed to the lava river and yelled. They checked with psychic power. Luli observed for a while and said, "This should be from the Tsang family. It hasn't been long since he died. About half a month ago." The others also sensed it, but they were even more confused. Chapter 2389. Luli thought for hours but could not come up with a solution. It was the same for Lu Hai. Blood Fairy did not send any message. It would be hard for her to crack it as well. Yin Tianfan sent someone to search along the way back to see if there was another exit. That person ran away and came back in a couple of hours. What he told them made their hearts sink. They were surrounded by the two rivers of lava. No matter which way they went, they would have to cross the rivers. The only way was to go back to the valley and cross the river from the cliff. The cliff was covered with runes. Clearly, it was not possible. In that case, they had to find a way to cross the rivers. The Tsang family must have crossed the river. If so, there was no reason why they couldn't. "Let me try!" Yin Tianfan shouted. Lu Li and the others stopped him at once. He only had one armor. If he were to act rashly, he would not be able to defend himself without an armor. "Don't worry," Yin Tianfan explained, "the bronze has a special function. It can generate a shield. I want to see if the shield can stand the lava. If it can, I can take you over one by one." I believed Song Long and the others went over in the same way. "Okay." Lu Li nodded. Yin Tianfan walked over to the river slowly. The bronze in his hand glowed. When he was near the river surged violently. Streams of lava flew over in the form of dragons of fire. Yin Tianfan activated the bronze. The glow grew and then the glow intertwined, forming a shield that enveloped Yin Tianfan. Lu Li and the others held their breaths and stared at Yin Tianfan. As the lava rolled down, Lu Li and the others' eyes glowed. Because the ancient bronze light barrier was blocking the lava, Yin Tianfan did not suffer any damage inside. "Ha ha ha, as I expected." Yin Tianfan came back and laughed. "Song Long must have used his holy weapon fragment. I can take you over one by one." Lu Li turned to Yin Rulan, who shook her head. "My holy weapon fragment is not good enough. I cannot create a shield like this." "Let me try again." Yin Tianfan rushed over again. This time, he controlled the magma and held on for a few dozen breaths of time. Then, he flew back with certainty and said, "It's okay, I can bring you over. I'll fly over and take a look first." The lava river was only 1,000 zhang wide. If they could withstand it, they would be able to cross it in a single breath's worth of time. Thus, there was no problem at all. "Be careful," Lu Li said and let out the Phantom King. If something went wrong, he would have to rely on the Phantom King to save Yin Tianfan. Yin Rulan and the others became nervous and prepared to rescue him at any time. Yin Tianfan urged his ancient bronze spear to rush over quickly. When he reached the riverbank, his speed increased and he rushed toward the other side of the river. Whoosh! Yin Tianfan's body flashed and arrived there. Then, his body flashed and he rushed back. Everyone felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. The following matters were much easier to deal with. Yin Tianfan brought one person each time, and they easily crossed the river, successfully escaping. "Go!" Yin Tianfan had been relying on Lu Li all this time. Now that he could finally play a role, he was excited. His pride and confidence had been crushed by Lu Li. Now, he had regained some confidence. They pressed on. An hour later, more beasts appeared in the river. They were all in the shape of fish. Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan worked together to suppress them. Half a day later, they encountered another dead end. Another intersection of two lava rivers. This time, they relied on Yin Tianfan's holy weapon fragment to carry them across the lava river. 10 hours later, they found another kind of beast in the lava river. It was something similar to a snake with horns on its head and spikes on its back. There were many of these beasts, but their attack power was not particularly strong. Everyone attacked together and easily killed the groups of small snakes. Along the way, they also found some herbs that grew by the lava river. Only Yin Tianfan could collect such herbs. The others dared not to get close. They had traveled for 5 days. They had no idea how far they had traveled. They had killed many beasts and collected more than 100 herbs. Yin Tianfan gave some elixirs for body strengthening to Lu Li. Along the way, they didn't find any trace of Tsang Long and the others. They must have taken a different route, or else the herbs along the way would have been taken away. It had been 5 days. They were neither fast nor slow. They couldn't tell how far they had traveled. The scenery here was still the same. It was all reddish-brown rocks and soil, as well as rivers of lava. Lu Li had been observing the surroundings, including the distribution of each lava river. He would note it down in detail. If they could not find the exit later, they would have to solve the maze based on the distribution of the lava rivers. Another 5 days passed. Apart from encountering beasts, they were also collecting herbs. Lu Li thought about it for a few days and came up with a suggestion. They would look for the largest lava river and follow it upstream to see if they could find the source of the lava river. Lu Li believed that the exit should be at the source. They could find the source by going upstream. Yin Tianfan and the others followed Lu Li's suggestion. It didn't matter which way they were going. The group walked along a large lava river. They could find divine medicines along the river, and they could also encounter ferocious beasts. However, the ferocious beasts here weren't too strong, and everyone was able to kill and suppress them. The higher they went, the wider the river was. Clearly, the lava was coming from the same place. They were excited. They could find the source of the lava. The exit might be above the source. 4 days later, they found the source. There was a sea of lava and a huge volcano. Lava was coming out from the volcano. Black smoke billowed. They could feel the heat and the smell of sulfur from thousands of miles away. There are signs of fighting. There are bones of beasts in the sea of lava. Some herbs have been taken away. Hu Qing, who was scouting ahead, ran back and said, "This should be the exit. The Tsang clan's people have gone in before us again. I can vaguely sense traces of a battle at the crater of the volcano, so the exit is most likely inside the crater." Crater? Everyone's expressions changed. Lava was coming out from the crater. Did they have to go into the crater? If the exit was not inside and the bronze could not hold out, wouldn't they be buried in the sea of fire? "I will go and have a look." Yin Tianfan was duty-bound to fly up and circle around the sea. In the end, he immediately attracted dozens of giant beasts and countless small snakes. "Attack! Kill these berserk beasts first," Yin Rulan ordered. Everyone began to attack. Before all the beasts in the sea were cleared, they could not go in even if they knew where the exit was. Boom, boom, boom. They used their skills and treasures to kill the beasts. Soon, there were many dead bodies of beasts at the seaside. Chapter 2390. When Yin Tianfan entered the mouth of the volcano, everyone's hearts were in their throats, afraid that Yin Tianfan would die inside. If Yin Tianfan died, they would probably be trapped here because they didn't have any bronze artifact. Yin Tianfan went in for the time for half an incense stick to burn. When he came out, everyone was relieved. Yin Tianfan said with excitement, "I found the exit. It is under the volcano." The exit was found, but Yin Tianfan didn't go in right away because he could only take one person in at a time. Nobody dared to go into the interspatial artifact here because nobody knew if it could be used on the next level. If it couldn't be used, then Yin Tianfan would be the only one. If Yin Tianfan died, then everyone else would die as well. It wasn't difficult to go in. They just had to go to the exit and they could teleport out immediately. Then, Yin Tianfan would come back and take others in. The problem was that the Tsang family had already gone in. If they were to block the way inside, everyone could die. That was why they didn't dare to go into the interspatial artifact. Once the interspatial artifact couldn't be used inside, everyone would die. The Tsang family went in first. They knew that it was impossible for a large group of people to go in. Therefore, as long as they stayed at the exit, everyone would die. Of course, they had to go in. It was just a matter of who could go in first. If someone were to surround them, Then the one who went in would have to hold on for a few breaths. I will go first. Ruolan stuck out her chest, and spoke without hesitation. The other young masters objected. Qingrui said, Sister Lan, I will go first. You can go second. How can we let Lady Lan go first? Let me. I will go. You will be in danger if there are sacred patterns in there. A group of people immediately rushed to speak up, and even Lu Hai spoke up. If Yin Tianfan didn't bring anyone with him, he would go first. After all, he was the most powerful. Yin Tianfan waved his hand and said, I will go first. Sister Lan, we will trade for a piece of holy weapon. You go in first and I will go first. It will be safer. The others didn't have any objections after Yin Tianfan said so. Yin Ruolan knew that she was not as powerful as Yin Tianfan. Okay, stop arguing. Lu Li said after some thoughts. I will go first, Tianfan second, Qingrui third. The others can go after you. This won't do. Yin Tianfan refused at once. But Lu Li put up his hand and said, I know about sacred glyphs and I have more than 100 beasts. If I can use the interspatial artifact, I will be as powerful as an army. This Yin Tianfan was speechless upon hearing Lu Li's words. Lu Li's over 100 beasts were as powerful as an army of thousands. Yin Tianfan also knew about divine inscriptions. He should be able to hold out for a while. All right. Yin Tianfan thought about it. He took off the armor and handed it to Lu Li. Take control of this armor. It will be very strong. No need. Lu Li grinned and said, My defense is similar to your armor, maybe even stronger. It doesn't matter if I wear it or not. Everyone nodded in agreement when they remembered that tens of thousands of small white beasts could not break through Lu Li's defense. At this moment, they were looking at Lu Li in a different light. They suddenly realized, this warrior at the peak of the second tribulation seemed to be the most powerful one here. If he had the holy weapon shard, not even Yin Tianfan could defeat him. Of course, this was just a casual thought. If Lu Li and Yin Tianfan were to fight, it was hard to say who would emerge victorious. It was possible that Yin Tianfan could kill Lu Li in one move. Once the discussion was done, the rest of the matter would be easy to handle. Yin Ruolan and Yin Tianfan exchanged the holy weapon shard. They disconnected their spiritual connection and began to consume the shard. Lu Li, on the other hand, began to conserve his strength, preparing to go in later. He was thinking about all kinds of possible situations and ways to deal with them. 3 days later, Yin Ruolan and Yin Tianfan were both successful. Yin Ruolan went to the sea and took a stroll. She attracted some ferocious beasts and killed them. Then, she entered the crater of the volcano. After a while, Yin Ruolan flew out. She flew around the sea and went back in again. After the time for a few breaths, she came out. Okay. Yin Ruolan nodded. Lu Li stood up and said, Let's go. Lu Li and Yin Ruolan flew up. Yin Ruolan grabbed Lu Li's shoulder with one hand and activated the bronze shield with the other. Lu Li smelled a nice scent when he was close to Yin Ruolan. Some young masters were excited to see Yin Ruolan grabbing Lu Li. Later, Yin Ruolan would take them in as well, and they would have the honor to go with her. Whoosh! At first, Yin Ruolan didn't dare to fly too fast. She flew slowly and they entered the crater. The crater was filled with lava. They used the bronze shield to push the lava away. They flew to the bottom of the volcano. There was a small opening with glistening divine patterns that pushed the lava away. This must be the exit. Be careful, be careful. Yin Ruolan looked at Lu Li and said. Lu Li smiled and said, Don't worry. I, Lu Li, am like a cat. I have 9 lives. I will not die. Yin Ruolan sent Lu Li into the shield. Lu Li waved his hand and rushed in. Yin Ruolan left at once to bring Yin Tianfan in. She sped up. The faster she could bring people in, the safer the others would be. Buzzing, after a flash of white light, Lu Li found himself in a pitch-black hall. It was so dark that there was not a single ray of light in the hall. Someone is here. As soon as Luli came in, he sensed danger. He used the mark of Tao and sensed people nearby. There were only 5 or 6 of them. Buzzing. Without any hesitation, Luli released many wind warcraft at once, and they surrounded him. At the same time, he let Blood Fairy out to check the divine patterns at the bottom. He sensed that there were divine patterns nearby. This is good. Luli was relieved that he could use the interspatial artifact here. With so many wind warcraft around him, at least, he would not be killed instantly. Buzzing, as Luli had expected, the red lines under his feet lit up. Countless rays of light shot up to the sky and formed a huge cage, trapping Luli and the wind warcraft inside. In the dim light, Luli could make out the people inside. It was Tsang-He, Tsang-Yen, and the others. There were 5 of them. They were disappointed to see that it was Luli who came in. Charge! No matter who it was, since someone had come in, they must be killed first. Later on, Yin Tianfan and the others would come in one by one. They would kill Luli first and the others would die as well. Tsang-He threw the piece of holy weapon in his hand. The other 4 used various skills to attack Luli at the same time. Woo woo woo. Luli was the first to attack. All the wind warcraft used skills related to wind. The gust of wind slowed them down. Then, dozens of wind warcraft's horns glowed. Dozens of beams of light shot out. Boom boom boom. A piece of porcelain flew over, causing layers of space to tremble. A boundless divine might spread out, causing the entire hall to tremble. Are you the only one with a piece of holy weapon? Chapter 2391. Boom! The 2 pieces of holy weapon bumped into each other, creating a shockwave in space. The entire hall was shaking violently. The runes on the ground glowed. The cage built by Tsang Yen trembled violently and was almost destroyed. Boom, boom, boom. Many wind magical beasts were sent tumbling through the air before slamming into the divine rune cage. Tens of them were injured, and 3 of them were killed by the shockwave. That being said, the ray of light from the wind warcraft smashed away Tsang Yen and the others. Apart from Tsang-He, everyone else was injured. If it were not for the fact that Tsang Yen had set up a shield, all of them would have died. Fall back! Tsang-He saw that Luli was not seriously injured even though he was smashed away. Also, Luli had a piece of holy weapon. Tsang-He could not kill Luli in a short time. When Yin Tianfan and the others came in, Tsang-He would be in big trouble. Tsang-He left with the others and soon, they vanished into the corridor. Luli put away the relic and wiped the blood off his mouth. Luckily, he could use interspatial artifacts here or else he would be in big trouble. Tsang Long was not here either. If Tsang Long and Yin Tianfan had worked together, Luli would have died. Not all the wind warcraft could have survived. Buzzing, after the time for a few breaths, Luli saw a glow next to him. Yin Tianfan came in. When he came in, he saw that the wind warcraft were lying all over the place in the dim hall. 3 of them were dead. He hurried to look around and was relieved to see Luli. Are you okay? Where are they? Yin Tianfan dashed to Luli. Luli forced a smile and said, They are gone. Only a few of them ambushed us. I fended off 1 round of attacks and they left. That's good. Yin Tianfan said with shame, I should have come in first. I am sorry for putting you in danger. Let's not talk about this. Luli waved his hand. He sat on the ground with his legs crossed and waited for Blood Fairy to decipher the runes. After a while, Yin Chengrui came in. Luli put away the wind warcraft. More warriors were coming in. He was not afraid of Tsang Long anymore. Buzzing, every few breaths, someone would come in. Everyone was shocked to see the dead bodies of the wind warcraft. It seemed that Luli was ambushed. Yin Rulan also came in after the time it took for an incense stick to burn. She heaved a deep sigh of relief after she saw that everyone was still alive. Her towering chest rose and fell slightly. She looked extremely alluring. Bang! Luli sent a message to Tionfan. Tionfan took out a piece of holy weapon and smashed it several times. The cage was cracked. Blood Fairy was almost done. Naturally, Tionfan's attack broke the cage. Originally, there wasn't any light in the Great Hall. Earlier, it was because the divine imprint had released a trace of light. Now that the divine imprint had been broken, the Great Hall returned to its original pitch-black state. Buzz, someone took out a luminous pearl, but this place seemed to be able to devour light, so even if there was a luminous pearl, the light was dim. Of course, to the crowd, complete darkness was nothing. This bit of light was enough. Go! Tionfan's battle intent soared. Song-He and the others were right in front of him. He really wanted to catch up to Song-He and kill them all. This hall had 2 corridors, one on the left and one on the right. There were some decorations in the hall, but Tionfan didn't bother to look at them. Since Song Long and the others were here, the treasures must have been taken away. They walked along the corridor that Song-He and the others took. Luli asked Blood Fairy to scout ahead in case they were ambushed by Song Long and the others. Tionfan didn't send anyone to check. He walked in the front by himself. The corridor was long. They walked for a couple of miles before they came to a door. The door was open, and they could see light from outside. Luli and the others used psychic power to check. Outside was a huge valley with 5 houses, 1 temple and 4 dark castles. Treasures! Everyone was excited. There must be treasures in the 5 halls. Maybe this was the core area of the Hall of 7 Tones. The view here was breathtaking. Apart from the 5 halls, there were many pavilions, gardens, and lake. Clearly, this place was decorated with care. The most important thing was the temple in the middle. Anyone would be shocked at a glance, just like how mortals would feel when they saw a god. They would have the urge to kneel and worship the god. Such a beautiful environment, such a sacred temple, and such exquisite decorations. It was highly possible that this was where the master of the Hall of 7 Tones resided. There must be treasures here. Let's go. Even though they didn't see anyone in there, Tionfan and the others had no time to worry. They dashed out of the corridor and went in. As soon as they went in, they used psychic power to check for traces of Song-He and the others. It was quiet inside. They didn't see anyone. It was as quiet as a land of death. Tionfan waved his hand. They spread out to check. Soon, they received a report. Apart from the entrance, there were no other exit. There were steep cliffs on the 4 sides, and all of them were engraved with runes. They gathered around the temple and the surrounding castles. Tionfan and Luli were outside the temple. The temple was dark as well. There were many carvings of flowers, birds, fishes, and insects. The temple had a radius of 2 miles. What surprised Luli and the others was that the temple didn't have doors. The 4 castles don't have doors either. From the distance came people's shouts. They were confused. How could they go in without doors? Where were Song Long, Song-He, and the others? Why couldn't they see anyone? There was something else. How could they teleport out of the Hall of 7 Tones? If they could not enter the temple and the surrounding castles and there were no exits, then they might be trapped in the Hall of 7 Tones forever. The exits must be in one of the 4 castles or in the temple. Luli observed for a while and came to a conclusion. Song Long and the others must have entered one of the places. Now it was time to find out how to get in. Luli told Blood Fairy to go and check while he wandered around nearby to check out the castles. There were some flowers, birds, fishes, and insects on the castles as well as some strange symbols that Luli found familiar. Musical notes. After a moment, Luli suddenly realized that those strange symbols were musical notes. Since this place was called the Hall of 7 Tones, the musical notes must have some special function. Are they the keys to open the castles? Luli frowned. He walked around the castle carefully. Then, he sat down on the ground and began to think about the musical note. Luli, I have found something. Tianfan and the others came over. Luli was facing a castle. They gathered around the castle to observe. But they did not see anything special. Even when they saw the musical notes, they did not think too much about it. Who has a zither? An hour later, Luli opened his eyes. Inrulin was surprised. Then, she took out a zither and handed it over. Luli took it over and put it on the ground. He tested the notes and then began to play. The song he played was a little stiff and very sad. It made people feel sad. Slowly, everyone fell silent, and an image appeared in everyone's mind. The sun set over the yellow sands, and the city had been reduced to ruins. Countless corpses and blood filled the city, as well as countless strange races. Most importantly, within a dilapidated manor, a young girl was playing a zither in grief. In front of her was a powerful corpse. This scene was very strange. It suddenly appeared in everyone's mind, and everyone felt as if they were seeing this scene with their own eyes. Buzzing, the castle in front of Luli suddenly glowed. Then, a black gate appeared. Only then did everyone come to their senses. They were overjoyed. Chapter 2392. The door to the treasure was not opened easily. It was because Luli had deciphered the musical note. He had to thank the law of sound he learned in the Sea of Sound. Even though Luli hadn't completely mastered that law of sound yet, it had laid down some foundation for him. His experience with divine glyphs was the reason why it was so easy. Divine glyphs and the law of sound were both indispensable. Could someone else have deciphered it? The door to the treasure was opened, but Luli didn't get up. Seeing that they were eager to try, he waved his hand and said, "Go in and have a look. I think the treasures are gone. They must have been taken away." Luli didn't want to go in. Tianfan went in with his team and Inrulin went in as well. Luli went to the castle next door. He didn't know if there were treasures in there, but he had a feeling that the door had been opened. Since it had been opened, it meant that everything inside had been searched. He walked to the second castle. He walked around and then sat down with his legs crossed to study the musical notes here. There were musical notes here as well, but not the same as before. After comprehending for an hour, 7 or 8 people rushed out of the first castle with dejected faces. Tianfan smiled bitterly and said, "The inside has indeed been searched. There's nothing left. Let's go to this one. But I don't think there is anything left as well." Luli picked up the zither and began to play. While he was playing, another picture appeared in everyone's mind. It was a picture of a beautiful girl fighting against a group of beasts in the wilderness. The girl was strong, but the beasts were stronger. Compared to the girl, the beasts were like ants and dragons. The golden door was opened. Luli shook his head and sighed. He walked to the third castle. Tianfan's expression darkened when he saw this, but he still brought his men in. This time, Inrulin didn't go in. She followed Luli to the third castle. Luli walked around the third castle for 3 times to memorize all the musical note. By the time he was done, Tianfan had come out with his team. Just as Luli had expected, there was nothing in the second castle. It was empty. Even the furniture had been moved away. Only a few empty halls were left. The third castle was opened, but Luli still didn't go in. He went to the last castle. He had actually given up. These 4 castles were the easiest to break through. Song Yen was an expert in divine inscriptions. He should have broken through all of them and looted all the treasures inside. As expected, when Tianfan and the others came out, Luli had cracked the 4th castle. They went in and walked around before they came out. Tianfan's eyes were filled with sadness as he stared at the temple. The 4 castles were empty. Song Long and the others could only stay in the temple. They must have obtained the treasures of the 4 castles, and it was very likely that their strength had greatly increased. Even if they entered the temple, they might still be killed by them. Of course, the treasures here were all ancient treasures, and it was very likely that they all had ancient divine imprint. Song Long and the others might not be able to use the treasures they obtained. Just like the ancient bugle sword and the others, they couldn't use them now either. Everyone turned to the ancient temple. Lu Li began to search on it. As expected, he found some mysterious music note. But the music notes here were well hidden. They were among the flowers, birds, fishes, insects, and relief. They seemed to be intermittent, not as complete as the ones in the other castles. Lu Li closed his eyes and used the trace of Tao to sense. This time, it was much easier for him to observe. After observing for 2 hours, he finally found more than 1,000 musical notes. He frowned. The more than 1,000 music notes were messy, and he felt there were 3 pieces of music. In other words, he had to put the more than 1,000 music notes together into 3 pieces and perform them in full to open the door of the temple. 4 castles, 4 pieces of music, plus the 3 here, 7 pieces. Hall of 7 notes. Lu Li nodded. He sat down with his legs crossed and began to meditate. He felt the music would be helpful to his understanding of the law of sound. There were many things he couldn't understand before, but now, he was enlightened. He didn't have time to study the law of sound. He had to crack the temple as soon as possible. Otherwise, if Song Long and the others got all the treasures, it would be their doomsday. There was another thing. The exit of the Hall of 7 Notes was probably inside the temple. Therefore, to get out, he had to open the temple. Everyone gathered in the divine temple and quietly pondered. Perhaps they could comprehend some nomological true meaning from these flowers, birds, fish, insects, and human reliefs? Lu Li spent 3 days and 3 nights trying to understand the music. When he opened his eyes, they were filled with sorrow. He took out his guqin and began to play. At first, the music was intermittent and unpleasant, but after the time for 1 incense stick to burn, the music became mellow and smooth. Images appeared in everyone's mind again. These scenes were very sad. In fact, Yin Ruolan burst into tears when she saw the last scene. In the image, a beautiful girl and a man were walking hand in hand in the garden. They were smiling happily and their eyes were full of affection. But then, the image changed. The man appeared in the coffin with a blood-red sword on his chest. The beautiful girl had a frivolous look on the man's face. She climbed into the coffin and snuggled up to the body. In the end, she covered the coffin slowly. Buzzing, the temple shone brightly and a black door appeared. Everyone's spirits were immediately lifted. But they didn't rush in. They looked at Lu Li. Lu Li thought about it and said solemnly, Song Long and the others should be in there. Be careful. Let's go. Yin Tianfan took out his bronze armor and put it on. Yin Rulan took out her holy weapon fragment as well. They rushed in at the same time. Lu Li and Yin Qingrui were in the second row, followed by the others. With a flash of white light, everyone appeared in a large hall. This hall was very imposing and solemn, like a temple. The hall was empty. There was nothing in the hall except for a coffin in the middle. That was right. It was a coffin. What shocked everyone was that the coffin was exactly the same as the one they saw in the images. It might be the coffin of the beautiful girl and the man she loved. But, at this moment, the lid of the coffin was open. Everyone scanned it with their spiritual will and found that it was empty. There was nothing inside. The lid of the coffin is broken. One of them walked over, looked around and said, The coffin must have been opened. The body inside must have been taken away. Song Long is not a human. Yin Rulan was still immersed in the touching story. She said angrily, They took the treasures but they didn't let go of the body. This is so hateful. If I have the chance, I will kill Song Long with my own hands. Let's go. Chapter 2393. To the left of the hall was a corridor. Soon, they came to a side chamber. Similarly, this side palace was also swept clean. Everything inside was gone, completely plundered. There were 3 doors in the side chamber. The left and right doors were also connected to side chambers. Tianfan and the others went in and checked. Again, there was nothing inside. There was a painting on the wall on the left that had clearly been taken down. They could only follow the passageway in front of them. There were many side halls along the way, and some of the side halls had wooden furniture. Apart from those, there was nothing else. Everything must have been looted. After the time for 3 incense sticks to burn, they had searched dozens of side chambers without finding anything. Eventually, they arrived at a door. The door was closed and the runes were glowing. Tianfan and the others were nervous. They were on guard, ready to attack at any time. The runes on the door indicated that Song Long and the others might be in there. Tianfan looked at Lu Li, who had asked Blood Fairy to check. Lu Hai was also studying the runes on the door. A moment later, Lu Li said, "The door is easy to open. But be careful when you go in. Be prepared for battle." Buzzing, Lu Li poured out divine energy. The runes glowed. Then, the 2 huge doors opened to the left and right quietly. Everyone's spiritual force probed inside, but it was like mud entering the sea. Their spiritual force probed inside, but it was like a piece of chaos, and nothing could be detected. Lu Li asked Blood Fairy to go in first. A moment later, Blood Fairy said, "There is a hall in there. But there are powerful runes. I cannot see it. I do not know the details." "You cannot see it?" Lu Li was confused. He asked again, "Why can't I find out? Did someone set up the runes? Is it the runes of the hall?" "The runes of the Hall of 7 Tones are activated." Blood Fairy said, "I don't know if the runes of the Hall of 7 Tones are activated, or someone else has activated it. If it is the latter, it will be troublesome for you to go in." Lu Li nodded. He told Tianfan and the others about what Blood Fairy had found. Tianfan and the others looked at each other. Soon, they were determined. They had come this far. There was no way back. Even if there were mountains of swords and seas of fire, they had to go or else they would be trapped here. "Come in," Tianfan shouted in a deep voice. He exchanged glances with everyone else. Everyone was ready. Tianfan and Rulan rushed to the front. The 2 of them flew into the black door. A white light flashed and the 2 of them disappeared. "Go!" Lu Li and Qingrui rushed in as well, followed by the people behind them. All of them were equipped with weapons and were brimming with killing intent. They were ready to go in and fight. Buzz, after a flash of white light, Lu Li found himself in a hall. It was a large hall with a thin layer of white mist. Lu Li could not see the edge of the hall. He could only see many stone pillars looming in the white mist. Where are Tianfan and Rulan? Lu Li suddenly realized that Qingrui was the only one here. Tianfan and Rulan were gone. He waited for a breath of time, but no one came in. He knew that there was a problem. "They're gone!" Qingrui cried out in alarm, and a look of panic appeared on his face. After all, Song Long and the others were inside. If they were teleported separately, they could be killed one by one. "Don't worry!" Lu Li shouted. He told Blood Fairy to go and check at once, while he himself observed the surroundings. Since something had happened, it was pointless to be anxious. He had to stay calm or else he could be killed. "Let's walk around." Lu Li did not see anything wrong. He stepped forward. The heaven separation bead glowed, as he sent out more than a dozen wind warcraft to surround them. In this way, even if someone were to attack, the wind warcraft could fend them off for a while. It was quiet. There was no sign of any divine patterns. It felt like an empty hall. Lu Li and Qingrui moved forward slowly. Blood Fairy had been checking, but there was nothing. The hall was spacious. Lu Li and Qingrui wandered around. There was no danger, only countless stone pillars. Every stone pillar was the same. The two of them felt dizzy. They walked around but could not find the end. Not even the walls could be seen. After the time for half an incense stick to burn, Luli waved his hand. Don't go. There is a super illusion here. We cannot go out like this. Incheng was more worried. He was not worried about himself, but about Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan. If the formation of illusion was controlled by Tsang Long and the others, then they would all be killed one by one. Luli sat down and waited for Blood Fairy's result. He could not solve the formation. If Blood Fairy could not, then it would be troublesome. Master, after the time for half an incense stick to burn, Blood Fairy said, there is a super formation of illusion here. It is the main divine pattern of the Hall of Seven Tones. I cannot solve it now, but I can take you to the others. Okay. Show me the way. Let's go to Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan first. Luli stood up. If Tsang Long and the others were to attack, they would kill Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan first. If he went to find the two of them and reunited, everyone's ability to protect themselves would be greatly enhanced. Luli did not say anything to Yin Chengrue. He rushed into the distance and Yin Chengrue followed him. Yin Chengrue knew that Luli must have found something or else he would not be in such a hurry. Blood Fairy led Luli to the left and right and in circles. After the time for one incense stick to burn, Luli suddenly heard some rumbling noise. He could still feel the might and killing intent. Buzzing, 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 from the heaven separation bead, Luli let out many wind warcraft as well as Phantom Master and Phantom Shadow. He dashed over at the top of his speed. Yin Rulan and Yin Tianfan were besieged by more than a dozen people. They were covered in blood. Yin Tianfan's breath of life was weak. Clearly, he was badly injured and he was struggling. What? Luli heard a sound of surprise. Then, Tsang Long shouted, fall back, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Luli rushed over with more than 100 wind warcraft, Phantom Master and Phantom Shadow. When he arrived, he saw that Tsang Long and the others had hidden themselves in the white haze. Not even psychic power could follow them. Brother Fan, Sister Lan. Yin Chengrue hurried over while Luli wandered around in case Tsang Long and the others suddenly turned around. Luli was shocked to see how miserable Yin Tianfan and Yin Rulan were. If he had been late for the time for half an incense stick to burn, the two would have died. With the two dead, the fate that awaited the others would be death as well. Yin Chengrue healed the two. The two did not worry about anything else. They sat on the ground to recover. After the time for half an incense stick to burn, Yin Rulan managed to open her eyes and said, Luli, put us into the interspatial artifact and go find the others. They will all be killed. Sure. Luli nodded. Tsang Long and the others could come and go as they pleased. Clearly, they had solved the runes here. Even if they could not control the runes, at least they knew how to move. Luli put the two into the heaven separation bead and left with Yin Chengrue. Tsang Long and the others did not leave because they were afraid of Luli. They did not want to be stalled by Luli and wanted to kill the others. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.